Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? Before we begin the webinar, may we inform you of the following guidelines. Only panelists, research speakers, and moderator will use the microphone for smooth implementation of the webinar. You can write your questions or comments in the Q&A box located below the screen anytime. Questions will be discussed after all the presentations of the panelists or research speakers. The webinar is recorded for documentation purposes. You can download the presentation materials upon receipt of an email advisory from the organizer indicating the link and password. Certificate of attendance will be given a week after the webinar. Thank you for your kind attention. The webinar will begin shortly. Please stay tuned. Thank you.
Get ready, we're about to start the webinar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our event, the State of the Philippine Media webinar. Just for the information of everyone, there are something like 67 in the audience, and I think 42 are already logged in, but some are yet to log in, so they'll just follow. And we have invited 11 panelists and resource speakers to be with us. So hopefully we will have a total of something like 77 in our audience. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Norilyn Babiera and I lead Fiera de Manila for the last 25 years. Our companies, Fiera de Manila, Kantar Media Philippines, and Philcourse, we organize the media outlook for the last 80 years. But because of what's happening in our country, we want to take a look at what's happening with the Philippine media landscape in the first 6 months of this year. 2020 has brought us major disruption that pushed everyone to be in the new normal world with, of course, new directions. Notably, the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdown of a major broadcast have impacted major changes in the Philippine media ecosystem and the way Filipinos consume media in the last 6 months. So, what is the current state of Philippine media ecosystem given these disruptions? What are its implications in advertising business and in brands? So let us discuss all of this today. And we are now going to get down to business. So let me introduce our host and moderator for this webinar. She started in Aspac and Gray as a media buyer and became the first chief growth officer and agency head in the industry to lead 2 media agencies brands, Starcom and Spark Foundry, a capability brand and all housed under Starcom Media Best Group in 2017. Her expertise is in developing media strategies across a wide array of industries using communications and consumer research. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome the Chief Executive Officer at Intersections Communications Incorporated. We all know her because she's our friend in the media, Ms. Gladys Pasenilio. Good afternoon, Ms. Gladys.
Good afternoon, Miss Noreling. I'm so happy to be part of this session for today. And it's great to be here to be, sharing also my insights together with all of the panelists and speakers that, I deeply admire in the industry.
Okay.
So, you know, in terms of my observation within the media landscape, obviously I don't want to preempt our speakers and they will share their, expertise and their insights in terms of the trends and forecasts. I'd like to concentrate more on the consumer. Now more than ever, media practitioners, marketers, and everyone in the industry has to really stay close to the consumer because we've seen new consumer needs emanating because of the COVID, because of the quarantine, and in terms of priorities and behavior, the consumer has changed in the last, 3-4 months. So it's very critical for brands to understand these changes within our consumers. Second would be a cashless society. I've been handling banks or financial accounts for the past 20 years. And the Philippines, for some reason, that's really a problem for the credit card industry because prior to COVID, it's still 5% at maximum 9% in terms of the penetration of the credit cards because we have these safety issues, as a culture for Filipinos. But again, because of what has happened, it, accelerated in terms of, the society adapting now to more of a digitized cash society. Third would be the e-commerce. No, it's quite exciting in a way, and let's see how the brands will really cope. I'll say cope or catch up because while the others are quite fast, now is the time for all of the other advertisers to really strengthen in terms of their e-commerce capability. So let's get down to business and start with our first speaker for today. The first presentation is focused on the state of the traditional media, TV, radio, and print. And he is a member of the Digital Measurement Board, or DMB, of the Internet Mobile Marketing Association of the Philippines, widely known as IMAP, to which he served as director in 2013. He also served as board of director of the Marketing and Opinion Research Society of the Philippines, or MORES, and he was a past president in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome a dear friend of mine, Jay Bautista.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Gladys, for that great introduction. I'm very happy to be part of this first virtual event of Fiera, that's the State of Media in the Philippines. Let me share my screen and start my presentation. Okay, so I've been given the topic of sharing with you the latest in terms of traditional media in the Philippines over the last few months. Of course, it's not a surprise that it's been a very challenging year, not just for Filipinos, but for everyone around the world. And one of the descriptions I've heard over and over again, it's like the Filipinos are between a rock and a hard place. And we started the year with the volcanic eruption, and then the pandemic started. And then we had a typhoon in the middle of summer, and looks like we're still struggling with the challenges of the pandemic. One of the sources of my presentation this afternoon is an online survey that we've been conducting every few weeks since March of this year. To date, we have completed 4 waves of this online survey that covers total Philippines. And I'd like to share with you some relevant findings when we spoke with consumers across the country. First of all, what's the national mood among Filipinos today? There are basically 3 things that they are very concerned about. And these are, of course, their health, the economic outlook of the country, and the future. Um, Two of these questions, health and the economic outlook, has been asked over the last 4 waves of the study. And you'll notice that with regards to health concerns, it's still high, but it has gone down by about 6%. So still a concern among Filipinos. What has increased over the last few months is the concern about the economy. And this has increased by 10% to about 61% among those who were interviewed. A new question we introduced in the last wave, which was conducted in May, towards the end of May, talked about concerns about the future. And 52% of the respondents in the survey said that they were concerned about their future and their family. Okay. Other things we asked about the mood of Filipinos over the last few months was how they were impacted by the lockdown, the quarantine, and the economic um, um, uh, the economy slowing down. And these are some of the things that were mentioned as critical concerns impacting them personally. The first one is related to experiencing day-to-day disruption. So compared to the first wave in March, it's still at a high 85%. So it has not gone down in terms of the perception of Filipinos. 85% of those interviewed still say that they are continuing to experience disruptions to their day-to-day activities. Another thing that's impacted them, and I think that's now increasing, is the effect on their household income. This has increased by 4% compared to the first wave in March, probably because all of the mitigating activities done by the LGUs and the national government in terms of social amelioration and relief goods have already stopped. And now they're starting to really feel it, the impact of not having enough from their household income. And then finally, a third area that's impacting them on a personal level is personal financial planning. So now they're really more focused in terms of being proactive about planning for their financial future. And this has increased by 2% versus the first wave back in March. With regards to how they see the government addressing the situation, the initial rating was about 78% approval. That has since gone down by 10% to around 68% approval rating in terms of how the government is handling and how confident they are in terms of what the government is doing to manage the pandemic. So what does that? So that's on the consumer side and the economic side. And as Gladys and Norilyn mentioned, we also saw a major disruption in terms of traditional media with the shutting down of ABS-CBN last May 4. And that has also been affected by the recent announcement yesterday or the other day, June 30, about further shutdown of ABS-CBN's digital platforms, the TV Plus and their satellite service, Sky Direct. So I'll talk about that more in a few seconds. So those are sort of the macro areas that have affected our consumers and now are affecting the media consumption in the Philippines. So for this afternoon, I'll be sharing with you 3 trends that we've observed over the last few months and that might be affecting the rest of the year when it comes to the media industry in the Philippines. First trend is that the world of media is now in flux. So what we knew 6 months before in terms of how consumers were using media, some of it are no longer valid. Some of it are probably have changed dramatically. And I'd like to share with you some highlights of what we've observed in terms of how the pandemic, the quarantines have affected, and the shutdown have affected media consumption among Filipinos. The second trend will be more focused in terms of how the television landscape has changed in a matter of weeks. And we'd like to describe this as a sort of a roller coaster ride for Filipino TV viewers. And then finally, I'd like to answer the question, is the advertising industry already in a recession? Or is it just, or are we just experiencing a slowdown? So those are the three trends I'll be sharing with you in the next few minutes. The first trend focuses on the world of media in flux. So I'm gonna highlight again some results from our online national study. It's called COVID-19 Barometer, which have been conducted since March of this year. The latest figures I'll share with you is from the May survey that was completed. So in this chart, we'd like to segment media usage over the last month from the May study. And we'd like to highlight two aspects of how Filipinos are consuming media. Which platforms have noticeably decreased in terms of usage and also penetration, and which platforms or media have increased in terms of usage and also in terms of penetration. Um, for those platforms affected by the lockdowns, quarantine, and the pandemic, these are newspapers, printed magazines, and also the incidence of Filipinos going to movie houses. So those three media platforms have experienced significant decrease over the last few months. In contrast, we've seen an increase in usage and also in terms of penetration across several other platforms. Radio has shown an increase, and separate from traditional radio is also online streaming of radio. So people have also listened more to radio via online and their streaming apps. We've also seen people increasing their behavior towards listening to podcasts and streaming music. TV has experienced a growth over the last few months as people have been stuck at home during quarantine. But the major movers are really related to online and digital activities. So online video, social networking, instant messaging, email apps, visits to websites. These have significantly increased over the last few months compared to the period before we had the ECQ or the quarantine. So that's the Philippine perspective. I'd like to share with you now how we compare to other countries in Southeast Asia with regards to media usage as well. So in this chart, we're going to compare the Philippines to four other countries: Australia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. You will see two bars with two different behaviors. So the gray bars will show us the percentage of people who have reduced consumption of the media platform in the last month. And then the gold or yellow bar shows us the percentage of consumers who've increased their consumption of a particular media platform. So the first five are traditional platforms. So TV has grown more than it has decreased. Same with radio. It has increased in terms of usage versus those who listen to radio less. However, as I mentioned earlier, printed newspapers, printed magazines, and going to cinemas have decreased more than it has increased over the last 4 months. And if you compare it to other countries, we see a similar pattern. So newspapers, printed newspapers, magazines, cinemas have also all been affected by the current pandemic, while television has grown. And the Philippines is in the top 3 together with Vietnam and Indonesia among the countries. The lower part of the screen will show you the dramatic increase in online activity among consumers, not just in the Philippines, but also across other markets. Internet surfing, visiting websites, social networking, instant messaging, etc., including online streaming of radio, streaming of podcasts, and watching YouTube, have all increased much more than they have decreased compared to the previous month. And I'd like to echo what Gladys mentioned in her introduction, that the consumers have significantly changed their behavior over the last 3 months, and media owners, advertisers, and marketing practitioners need to take note of this. Focusing a little bit more on digital activities, these are the top platforms online that have had significant consumption in the last month, and you will also see comparisons across the first 4 waves of our COVID-19 barometer study among Filipinos across the country. So very stable consumption of YouTube, Facebook Messenger, and Facebook. We're seeing slight decrease in some platforms that had initially had high consumption. Instagram seems to be slowing down, as well as TikTok. I remember the first few weeks, everyone was on TikTok. Looks like there's some fatigue there. Snapchat has also gone down as well, while Zoom continues to grow in terms of consumption and popularity. I'm sure later on the digital segment, you'll hear more about trends affecting online consumption among Filipinos. The second trend now is focusing on television and the roller coaster ride that we've been observing just in the last 8 to 12 weeks. Okay, so this chart shows us, the viewing levels, or the ratings as we call it, in 4 segments. So prior to ECQ, the viewing levels were in between 13 to 15% of the population. So at any given time, around 13 to 15% of Filipinos would be watching TV. As soon as the lockdown started in Luzon around March 15, we immediately saw a big increase of about 20%. In absolute numbers, that's around additional 3 million people who started watching TV. So presumably these are people who used to work, used to go to class, or used to have a lot of outdoor activities, but now we're stuck at home. That boosted TV viewing by 22%, or around 3 million new viewers. Fast forward to May 5, we saw the reverse. ABS-CBN was served a cease and desist order. The same day they signed off the main channel, ABS and Studio 23. The next day, we observed a 24% drop in viewing across the country. So we gained about 3 million in March. We lost around 3 million in May. And that has not recovered over the last 4 weeks. And then 2 days ago, TV Plus and Sky Direct were also shut down. And we've seen another 2 million or a million more viewers disappear among the TV landscape. Okay. But of course, there are still viewers who were left. So the question in our minds, where did the other viewers go when ABS-CBN was no longer on the air? Okay. So the left-hand chart will show you a bar chart showing us the channel shares before the ECQ, during the ECQ, and after the ABS shutdown. So before the ECQ, it was a very competitive landscape between ABS, had about 40% share of total Philippines, and GMA had 32%. When the lockdown started, the networks could not air fresh programs except for news. They had to re-air previously shown telenovelas or teleseries. And we saw that the shares of ABS went down while GMA maintained their share. And then we saw an increase in terms of pay TV or cable viewing. When ABS went off the air, most of the viewers shifted to GMA. So right now they have about a 54% share of the market. Okay, they gained about 26% viewers when ABS-CBN went off the air. Other channels that benefited were TV5 and a lot of cable TV channels. So 27% of the viewers went to pay TV. and added around 7 more minutes to their viewing on a day-to-day basis. The last trend I'll share with you is related to advertising. And I'd like to answer the question, is the Philippine advertising market in a recession? The answer is not yet, but we've seen significant declines. Here, the left-hand chart shows you the month-by-month progression of advertising activity based on published rate cards. So the first chart is based on spend. We saw that the first 3 months of the year was quite healthy. There was growth in television and on radio in terms of absolute value. But that significantly changed as soon as the lockdown started, where we saw a 20% decline in advertising pesos that were being spent. That continued to the month of May. On the next chart on the right side is actually our monitoring of the number of advertisers who were actively advertising from the start of the year to the period during April and May, where we had the quarantine and the ABS shutdown. So we see that there has been a significant decline. A lot of advertisers have started to hibernate. So radio, for example, which was averaging about 700 advertisers per week, are now down to less than 600 or 500 advertisers. Same is true for television, averaging about 300 advertisers, now down to less than 200. Print used to have around 300 advertisers too. Now they're down to about less than 100 advertisers on a week-to-week basis. Looking at other metrics in terms of advertising, if you look at the volume of spot or the count of the number of ads being aired or shown, same pattern can be seen. We were looking at healthy volume of ads, particularly for radio in the month of March. But as soon as the lockdown started, we saw significant declines in terms of ad volumes. So from about 1 million spots, we're now down to around 700 spots per month. The same with ad minutes, just looking at TV and radio, from almost of more than 400,000 spots in March, we're now down to around 320,000 spots or minutes, 300,000 minutes for the month of May. The shutdown of ABS did not significantly affect TV as a whole because they also launched their counter channels on TV Plus, like Cinemo, Yay, Teleradio, Jeepney, and Asian Novela. So some of the advertising that was supposed to go to ABS went to their TV Plus or DTT channels. In terms of affected categories, here's the list. So some categories decide to pull back, like hair shampoos, herbal supplements, coffee and tea for the first 5 months of the year, while other categories were more aggressive. Detergents, milk powders, and vitamins decided to actually increase their spending during the quarantine period. Specific to advertisers, here's the list of top advertisers and how they behaved before the quarantine and during the quarantine period. So ENG reversed their advertising strategy. Unilever remained consistent to their spending strategy. Nestle increased, ACS increased, Unilab decreased, Jollibee significantly decreased for obvious reasons. Pfizer, Wyatt, and DMI Medical. Pfizer and DMI were flat, but Wyatt significantly increased their spending during the community quarantine period. So to answer the question, are we in a recession? I'd say not yet, because the data I've seen for June, which we are still yet to publish, actually showing growth for television in particular, in terms of spend, spots, and value. So our minutes. So I think to say that the the ad industry is in a recession might be too harsh at the moment, but definitely we are experiencing a very significant slowdown in activity. Okay. Lastly, I'd like to share some more data from our COVID-19 survey. And these are related to questions about shopping behavior, which again, I think is related to Gladys' introduction, is something we need to focus on as we try to strategize our marketing communication activities for the rest of the year. So on the question of where people were shopping, um, in March, we had a 70% um, of the population saying that they reduced shopping at physical stores. That has been going down, and right now it's down to 40%. So a 31% decrease in terms of people saying that they reduced their shopping at physical stores. Although with the increasing infection rates, I'm not sure if this will change in the next wave of our survey. What has increased is shopping in e-commerce sites. So from about 20% in March, it's now at a 51% level or a 27% increase. So people are getting comfortable with e-commerce shopping activities. The same with increased shopping with direct delivery at home. This has also increased by almost 30% compared to the same period in March. So around 55% of consumers say that they have increased shopping and are reliant on direct delivery at home. Again, for health concerns, most likely. And then on the area of how consumers are shopping, we see a healthy increase here. So 51% say they're now comfortable or they prefer paying with credit cards, debit cards, and mobile apps. I was in a forum last week where GCash was showing us very encouraging numbers of people shifting or downloading and using GCash among other payment apps. We've also seen an increase in people paying attention to prices. So with incomes affected, with employment, high unemployment happening, I guess this will probably continue in the next few months. People are becoming more conscious about prices and are actually paying more attention to products on sales. So 59% said that they are paying more attention to products or services that are on sale. And then finally, before I end my session or my part in today's session, what do consumers expect from companies and brands moving forward? So here are some expectations that were mentioned in the COVID-19 barometer study. Brands should be examples and guides to change. Brands should be practical and realistic on how they can help consumers in everyday life. Brands should be conscious about demonstrating how to handle the crisis or the pandemic. Um, Consumers are also saying that they expect advertising about brands to be about helping, uh, particularly the community. They also expect brands to be donating to charities, and they expect brands to communicate how they are helping their employees during the crisis. Overall, consumers are saying that advertising is very much welcome, and brands should communicate differently though during this very difficult times in the country. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. Back to Gladys.
Thank you very much, Jay. That was really very interesting, and obviously you'll join us as our key resource for our panel discussion. All right, so let's proceed now to our introduction of the rest of the panelists. Okay, now the panelists will be composed of media experts, media analysts, media planners, buyers, top advertisers, brand builders or agent from the agencies, and industry leaders who will draw insights from the data analysis, and emerging trends. Now, our first panelist is the current president of the Media Specialists Association of the Philippines, MSAP. And he has more than 25 years in the media advertising business with a strong business development background. He worked with some of the notable advertisers in the business, and he is now currently the general manager of PhD Media Network. Ladies and gentlemen, a colleague of mine, the person I deeply admire, Mickey De Castro.
Oops, sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello.
All right, so do we have
Okay, I'll comment on Jay's presentation, right?
yes, just your very top
Yeah.
line,
Top line, definitely, Jay, thank you for that presentation. Definitely as planners, and of course, I'm sure as advertisers and as vendors, we have a firm knowledge of what our audiences are and who are they and their behavior, etc. But with this pandemic, it has shattered, no, all our previous knowledge of these consumers. And definitely, what Jay has shown us, we need to have a true view of the sentiments of our now what we call the new normal consumers. And I hope in terms of doing that and encouraging your research to further this research is again to give us more confidence in doing some of our recommendations and insights to our clients. And thank you for that presentation, Jay.
Okay, thank you for that, Nikki. We'll get back to you later. So we will introduce now our second panelist. He is the current Vice President of the Public Relations Society of the Philippines. He is a writer and broadcaster hosting TV and radio programs, including Good Job Philippines, airing over DCRJ 810 within the AM band. His expertise are in public relations and human resource management. He worked with 3 multinational companies and 2 major Philippine companies. He is a lecturer, consultant, resource speaker, and host of various programs in the Philippines and even abroad. He is the head of external affairs at Manila Bulletin Publishing and president at the United Media Group Philippines, or UPMG. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Barbie Atienza.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Gladys. And I just want to correct that I'm not currently Vice President of the PRSP. I was a former Vice President of the Society. But yes, I'm here to represent the United Print Media Group, the UPMG. Thank you very much for having me here. And thank you very much, Jay. As always, you've always been giving us a bright light of what the real situation on the ground is. Exciting as it is, relevant as it is, the results, the outcome of the studies that were shared by Jay comes as no surprise because a lot of these things that are happening, while novel to us, novel, had to use that word, no? But something that's new to us, that's new information for us, but logically can be called out from what the observation is all around. No? As far as print is concerned, talagang it's very realistic that consumer behavior has affected us a lot because there are different ways of consuming news content, which is our currency. That is why we're also studying different modes of delivery. Particularly, it has pushed us ahead, pushed us in advance in embracing the online, the digital media, which we have already known in the past. But now, parang it was a rude awakening na, wait, it's not something that we should look forward to. It's something that's here and now, and we have to do the adjustments currently. And that's presently the challenge because aside from consumer behavior, there's also logistics and then the realities on the ground. Like for example, in circulation, distributing the printed copy has become a challenge. For the past 2.5 months, now we're starting to reel back, for example, in terms of delivery of the physical newspaper to Visayas and Mindanao. So that has inundated us a bit and has really brought down the number of copies down. And consequently, as you know, Gladys, syempre, with less copies in circulation, advertisers would find it, there would be an effect in terms of the effectiveness of such medium. So advertising revenues have been affected, number of circulation has been affected, the new ways of doing things has been pushed in advance, and these are things that we have to embrace now. So a lot of things happening, a lot of thinking has to be going on. There's no use for common sense now because there's nothing common about what's happening. Nobody can claim an expertise on the situation because it's all new to us. And print is no exception, but we're facing the challenge, and we intend to be, well, we tend to stick around and face the challenge.
Great. So thank you for that, Barbie. Now we'd like to introduce our third panelist. He has 21 years in radio industry, handling operations, sales, and marketing in Cebu and Manila. Currently in charge of terrestrial sales, marketing, events, and promotions at Manila Broadcasting Company, and Assistant Vice President for the Sales Department. Ladies and gentlemen, a very exciting figure within our industry, Mr. Santi Elizalde.
Good afternoon, Direk. Good afternoon, everybody. How is everybody doing? As far as the radio industry is concerned, it's been a mixed bag. I completely agree with everything that Jay said in his presentation. We find ourselves in a unique situation. As you know, radio has been morphing into not just a singular, but a multifaceted industry with the adaptation of digital. Now, what we have seen during this past 3 months or so is adaptation and acceleration. Yes, we were hit as an industry. We are currently coming out of that hit presently, but I'd say the largest changes right now are our acceleration into hyperspeed of digital and how our influencers both put out from Manila and in the provinces digitally, produce digitally, and actually conform to or customize to how advertisers would like to see their product being put forth, not just in radio, but also in digital, most especially. So I'd say that radio is very, very resilient. I'd say that radio is looking to a very bright future with the adaptation of digital as its third arm, third leg, if you may. We find that although the advertising spend and trend has decreased with a number of advertisers, it is returning. And because of the morph, the adaptation of digital, we're looking at campaigns which allow radio to shine as it should. We're looking at a morphing of not just digital, but terrestrial production as well, turning radio into more and more of a one-stop shop that people can go to for their various needs, not just advertising in radio, but also for production of materials which can be used by companies for their own personal uses outside of the industry. So it's been a rough road. It's been a mixed bag, but we're coming out of it and we're beginning to shine again. And it's actually looking pretty good.
Thank you for that, Santi. It's very interesting in terms of the observations from Mickey, Barbie, and Santi. Now, just to start our panel discussion, I just want to throw first, my first question before we go through the questions of our participants. Specific to Jay. Jay, you presented that you said, advertising industry is not yet in a recession, or we're not even sure if we will go to that level, right? Because we're seeing,
Right.
them slowly coming back, and obviously everyone wants to go after recovery, if we may say. But I'm quite interested to know if the P&G and the Unilevers of this world, obviously they need to advertise everyday products and all that. They're present everywhere, sari store and all. So is there a difference between like the top 5, P&G, Unilever, Nestle, and then the balance like top 15 advertisers, the medium-sized advertisers? Because that would really be the suppliers will have to feel that from those 15 advertisers. So we're wondering if you've observed patterns in terms of how they're behaving right now.
Yes. Yeah, I said that we're not in a recession because if once we publish the data for June, we will notice and compare that to April and May and Jan and Feb, we'll see a V-shaped pattern already. So there's going to be a dramatic increase on television and radio, and I guess Santi pointed that out earlier. So at least for the top 15 advertisers, even P&G has started to increase their spending in June already, when the quarantine was sort of slightly lifted to GCQ. We've seen more activity among the top 15 advertisers. And we're also seeing that that's also affecting what they've seen in terms of consumption patterns of consumers. There was stockpiling in March and April where people were trying to sort of hoard. That tapered down April, May, medyo nag-normalize. And now people are very much conscious of budgets because of income pressure. So there's really more need to communicate brands because you want to be the choice when it comes to the shopping behavior or the preferences of consumers. So to answer the question, yes, I think we're seeing a very fast recovery, at least among the top advertisers in June, particularly.
Great. So I think that's very good news for our industry. And at the end of the day, everyone would want to recover from this. And advertising will always be an accelerator for us to really, get back to business again. So there's a question from one of our participants. This is specific to Barbie.
Yes.
Their question is that, you've shared a while ago how the print industry is very much affected right now. But what are like the action plans, and what are your plans in terms of how you can pivot at this time of the pandemic?
The main factor in the pivot, in the turnaround, is basically sticking to our guns as far as quality of content is concerned. As I said, we live and die on content. Basically, it's something that we've already thought about even before this pandemic. It's just that I call it a rude awakening. That it's something that's already in the pipeline. Kaya lang, because of this situation, biglang you have to advance it. We have to do it right here and right now. And the reality is that as we have to stick to our commitment to churn out and create quality content that is reliable, that is timely, that is accurate. Now, how to deliver that news is something that we have to rethink about. The real purpose is still there. The main purpose is still there. But the way of being able to deliver that has to be thought of again. Print as it is will not die. That's our take on that. It will probably evolve into a more premium product with a niche market. There are certain markets segments there that will remain to be there, and they are quite a valuable segment of the market. Now, the other thing is we've always said that digital is a playmate rather than a nemesis to print. And it's something that we have to learn to embrace. And we've talked about this for the last half a decade or so. Kaya lang, medyo may pa rin na, we'll get there slowly, but surely we'll get there. But now, we just wake up and said, no, we don't have a choice, but we have to get there. No? For example, now we have really are investing a lot of our time, a lot of our thoughts, a lot of our, from our talent pool on how to invigorate our digital presence, and that's been happening for the last several weeks. We're now delivering news as well on digital. For example, now we have a daily news delivery at 5 o'clock, at 5:30 in the afternoon. It's called
Okay, so I think we've lost Barbie there, but
now. And I'm sure there are all daddies kahit siguro mga at least about 2 years. Hello? No. Are we okay?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
We're okay. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
Thanks for that. And Barbies, I think because we're a self-governed industry with UPMG, I'm sure together with the other print titles you guys are really discussing, and as a group, and you can all help each other and pivot. So we have here another question, and this is from Mr. Dennis Antihor. When you say, this is for Jay, and maybe Santi can also add to this. So when you say people consuming radio, what platform are they using in digital? So is that all the way to Facebook, YouTube, website, live streaming? As you know, the radio stations have different digital platforms.
Yes. So there's still, well, one thing we've noticed increase in listening to traditional radio. So typical devices is up. The other thing is digital listening to radio. So these are through streaming via different platforms now. The streaming sites of the stations themselves, they have apps that are available on mobile phones. And then, of course, there's YouTube as well. So those are some of the main platforms where radio content is being listened to online. And that, as I mentioned in my presentation, has grown significantly. Just before I leave, to Barbie's point earlier, I think the pivot to digital is key, and I congratulate them for embracing that and for their debut news program online the other day, or I think yesterday was the first episode. So the content of print, which is news and information, has actually increased in terms of importance among consumers over the last 4 months. And so because they're content providers, as soon as they pivot towards digital more, then they're in a very good place moving forward.
Yeah, maybe Santi, you can add to this.
Yeah, Jay, I agree with absolutely everything you said. As far as radio is concerned, aside from our traditional free-to-air, our digital has really picked up. On the FM band, our main strength has really been in Facebook and Facebook Live and our app as well, our apps as well. With regards to AM, it's done strongly with Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And that's, I suppose that's unique to us in MBC because we have a hookup between our cable TV network and our radio. So the visualization of our people on YouTube really helps out. So we have seen an uptick in all of them, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, which has really been a boon for us. It's not like it's something new, because we've been delving into the entire digital quite heavily for over 5 years now. It's just that we've noticed a boom, if you will, in the digital scene with us. And I think advertisers are finally beginning to realize, oh my God, radio is not just radio. It is radio as well as digital, especially now in the COVID when we don't have any on ground. So they're looking to us not just on free to air, on AM and FM, but more and more heavily on Facebook for FM, AM for Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for AM and our cable channels. So yeah, it's an evolution. It's an accelerated evolution of sorts.
Okay, so in terms of behavior, what you're saying is from radio, slowly the consumer is now adapting to the different platforms, and you guys are able to really hold on to this.
Yes.
So that's very interesting insight. I have now a question for Mickey.
Yes.
Anonymous attendee. What will be your record to brands in terms of media mix given their shoestring budget? Maybe this is for the small advertisers.
Yes, actually, I was already typing my answer to that question. Anyway, well, rate-wise, no, if you for a brand with a shoestring budget, I recommend the digital platforms. Here you can optimize and track your targeted consumers. No, I think if you have an extra budget, maybe own a news and information segment, whether on digital or on a traditional platform such as TV, as this has become among our consumers a good source of news and information. So maybe that's what I will recommend.
Thank you for that, Mickey. Very, very, very enlightening. Of course, everyone now is moving to digital, but maybe a more interesting question is, given what's happening, and Mickey and Jay can answer this, given what's happening with the ABS-CBN, we don't know yet what will be the final verdict on that. So is GMA able to, is the savings from that or the equivalent budget that the advertisers has initially parked for ABS or for the free-to-air on TV? And obviously GMA cannot take all of that, and I heard that they're already full because of advertisers. Do you see advertisers moving this budget to other platforms or other television? So, or will they just keep this as like, our savings, or they will not spend this? Because obviously the development is just quite, surprising, and everyone's just adjusting to what's happening right now. Mickey.
Okay. Well, I think I believe so. I think they have to, spend it somewhere that because they have to, they have their targets. And then I think I believe that although GMA may be full right now, but essentially consumers are already disrupted in a way in their viewing patterns and behavior, and they're looking for other ways. I think migrating from what they are used to and looking for platforms that are available at their disposal. For example, would be, I think, one of those is, I think, the cable and the pay channels. And of course, their mobile device becomes both their business tool and their entertainment source. So I think these are platforms that has to be considered by our advertisers, by our clients, in order for them to, compensate for what the lack of reach the television cannot provide them to other platforms that will give them their audiences.
Jay, what do you think?
Yes. Well, two things. In June, what we've seen is there's an increasing spend on pay TV channels. So I agree with Mickey there. We're seeing double-digit growth among pay TV channels across the board. So there's going to be a shift there. The other thing I'm anticipating is a shift towards radio. There's going to be a huge shift of budgets towards radio because aside from TV, in terms of reach, radio can deliver that. I'm gonna make a fearless forecast here on print. If print continues to pivot towards digital, given their content, they're gonna be attractive to some of those advertisers. And then finally, once the quarantines are lifted or relaxed to a certain level, and people are able to start moving around outdoor, would be a good platform, because right now I think it's a buyer's market out there, but the reach will be there because we already see the traffic has almost returned to pre-ECQ level. So there's also a reach level there. But at the end of the day, again, it would also depend on the objectives of the brands and the advertising. But if it's about reach, it's about eyeballs, and it's about quality audience, then pay TV, radio, print, and online and out of home will benefit from the excess capacity from the ABS shutdown.
Okay, thanks for that. So I'd like to build on that in terms of the print media, Barbie. So two things. We all know that given the proliferation of a lot of news, and maybe that's really the strength of the print media, because of a lot of fake news and all that, and that will always be the main value of respectable print organizations. So how are you on this, addressing that? And second, a question from one of our attendees. What's your assessment on the role of publicity in reaching audience and promoting brands, given that there's limited print space right now? So I'm not even sure if brands are still doing a lot of press releases or PR.
Well, I'll answer the first thing first. I think that's something that we have to commit ourselves into, regardless of how the business prospects are. No, like I say, we are in the business of creating content which is credible and objective and reliable, as opposed to maybe this will be our main tool against the proliferation of fake news. But then how to bring it out and deliver it is another way. Kaya it's imperative that we embrace. Kaya even as early as about 4 years ago, we've already been telling ourselves that stop calling ourselves as newspaper companies. We're news organizations, we're media organizations, regardless of what channels, what platforms we're going to use to deliver that news. No? So kailangan we should be able to deliberately and consciously keep ourselves committed to that that brand of responsible journalism. On the other hand, yes, there's quite a limitation of space, largely due to logistical concerns as well. The cost of paper and the cost of producing papers continuously been going up. So medyo may limitation. But in terms of delivering your message, if you were the client from the client side, delivering a message, I think everybody would agree that there's still a lot of premium in terms of finding that information in the right channel, which print has always been at the forefront of. Now, there's another way of doing it, what PRs, public relations practitioners such as myself have been doing through the years, di ba? We deliver the message not through box paid advertising, display advertising, but through branded content, native advertising, as some people would refer to it. So that's something. That's another area of opportunity for us. The big problem, Jay, ang tanong nga doon we're trying to do that. We're embracing the new medium. We're still sticking to the values of responsible journalism. Question is monetizing it. That's something that we still have to learn more about. We may be there, we may be delivering the news in online, but are we going to make enough money to sustain our operation? That's another challenge. We're still on the drawing boards as far as that is concerned.
That's interesting, and I don't think that's really just unique in the Philippines. I mean, even abroad. I know for a fact, for example, in Europe, all of the print organizations really group together and figure out how they will monetize or how they will, I don't know if there's a better term, to charge properly in terms of their digital assets, right? So it's also a challenge, but it's also exciting.
You know, Gladys, kahit sa global market na, there have been a lot of yung mga Publish Asia, mga World Newspaper Conference have been there, and they talk about different models on how to integrate print and digital. Pero bottom line, when you tell them, is there money there? We don't know. Nobody knows. But it's something that we have to get into anyway.
Correct. So we have here a question, maybe this is for Jay. Will the behavior change, I mean, from what you've presented, if all forms of quarantine be lifted? We know naman slowly nag-lift siya, right? For example, in parts in Balance Luzon, outside NCR, and GCQ na. So are we, seeing a change in the behavior of what you've shared a while ago?
Yes, actually, some of the behaviors will remain, I think, because a lot of companies are still going to extend their work from home policies. So I know for a fact some companies have already told their employees to keep working at home until the end of the year. So that will change the dynamics of consumer behavior. Schools, I think students are not going to be rushing to classrooms anytime soon, despite all the announcements we've been hearing. I think there's going to be a hesitancy. So I guess the short answer is until a vaccine is found, we'll probably see a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the new normal behavior persisting for at least the rest of the year for a lot of people. And then the third aspect would be the high unemployment. If people can't get jobs back, they have no choice but to stay at home and start really focusing on how they spend their money. So that's going to be a challenge for FMCG companies in particular.
Okay, so maybe this is for Mickey. Do you think LED billboards can also be considered as another platform or channel for advertiser at this time?
Well, I think that the challenge there is the traffic count, right? We rely on eyeballs when it comes to LED, or even the standard photographic billboard. No, I think that's quite a challenge right now. But I think if it will be strategically located on right now because everybody's in their own communities, right? So if these LEDs are in their community, so to speak, then I think that's an opportunity for LED. But if you are in the main thoroughfares, where right now, although napansin ko ang traffic pa rin eh, so so ibig sabihin may mga eyeballs talaga. So I think, but fewer eyeballs, yes. But I think the opportunity there is to focus the opportunities to focus it on the community areas, no, to expose your LEDs in those community areas.
Agree. So it's more of community versus the big ones in EDSA and the bigger thoroughfares, at least for
Yes,
now.
yes, at least for now.
Okay, so this is to any of the panelists. Feel free to answer. As mentioned, the advertising landscape is not yet in recession, but the market is in crisis. Has this made media actors more hesitant to exploring programs or content that may not result to sure ROI? What other opportunities do you think that can help accelerate recovery? So, anyone? Please, Sandy.
As far as radio is concerned, I think it's the opposite. I think now more than ever, people are looking for new and creative ways to go over and be heard, be seen, be noticed. And so, at least with us in NBC, we are actually going over and accelerating the number of unique concepts and ideas that we can offer to agencies and clients. In an entire shopping list of things, rather than just one or two, we offer 10, 15, 20, and we listen to them. There is nothing, as has been the case in the past, nothing is too wild, nothing is too crazy for us. So with the collaboration of agencies, clients, and radio, I feel that it's actually become a cornerstone, really, creativity and unique creative ideas. The thing with radio is because we're a hyper-local media and we are spread all over the country with cultural nuances and dialects, this is actually even more prevalent now. With our provincial stations, we're finding that they are looking for more creative and unique ideas and concepts to go over and attract people, viewers for digital, listeners for terrestrial, et cetera, that can cater not just to their listening audience, but also to advertisers. So yeah, it's been overtime for us as far as creativity is concerned.
Anyone who wants to add to that? So, okay, so for Mickey, so we are a medium-sized company and have been heavily engaged in digital advertising, mostly based on the advice of our agency. Yeah, sino kaya to? We feel we hit a growth threshold with that now. What is the solution? Add frequency on digital or diversity to other media to build more loyalty for the brand?
I think if you're already sort of plateaued, I think definitely you've already saturated your market in that particular platform. So therefore, you have to expand, add additional platforms that will give you additional exposure to your brand. Andyan si Santi, yung radio niya, daming innovation. Pati si Barbie yung print, di ba? I think what I have to add on to what Santi said. I think we're in a tipping point. Particularly what also Jay said, that that as we begin to say that we are approaching normalcy, the new normalcy in a way, I think advertisers should begin to as advertisers, I think, and of course you have your own targets. We have to jumpstart the economy, right? And I think by jumpstarting the economy, it opens a lot of doors to being creative, as Santi said, being creative, invention, innovation, that will drive consumers. I think right now everybody is open season to disruption. So I think what the advertiser said, the medium-sized advertiser said that if you think you've already plateaued, I think you have to look for opportunities in terms of creativity to your brand. Look for platforms that will benefit you more as you expand your brand to, to the next 6 months.
Okay, so I have a question to Jay, and this is more, a curious question. Because there's a challenge right now in terms of gathering data, right? And research more than ever is very important to closely follow the consumer. So in Kantar, how do you do this? How do you make sure that, you cover the consumers? Because this is the much needed data and insight on the side of not just the advertisers, but obviously the media partners, the agencies, and even the suppliers.
So Kantar was also affected by the pandemic because, especially in the Philippines and I think in most Southeast Asian countries that are similar to the Philippines, we rely on face-to-face methodology in terms of gathering information. And obviously with the quarantine, a number of companies were woken up with, a lot of restrictions. You can't do interviews anymore house to house. But fortunately, we have other options available. So we've pivoted as well. Media is not too much affected because we rely heavily on technology. But for example, for radio, we're going to be implementing app-based measurement. So you don't need to give out diaries anymore or do coincidental interviews or day after recall. We can now collect listening via an app that extends to digital as well. If you're on a streaming app, if you have an OTT platform, if it's based on a website consumption, we can measure that. So from a media consumption perspective, there are available alternatives that are digital in nature. If you still need to communicate to a respondent, we have methods related to chatbots, the use of chatbots. We have what we call access panels. So these are people who have agreed to answer surveys via Messenger, Viber, email, or go to a link. We even have online focus groups available already to get more information from consumers despite the quarantine and the lockdowns.
Great. So, I mean, it gives confidence to advertisers and marketers that, we're able to follow the consumer. I think that's great development. So, another question from Ms. Natalia Hardin. So, on print and TV, what would be the main concerns, reasons that a story will not push through today, especially if it's organically seeded?
Barbie?
Barbie.
This is why. Well, it's always a matter of content is always a matter of choosing what's relevant, what's interesting, what's going to be picked up, no. But then with the volume of stories that are coming in that are made available, what would limit us would be our space, the physical space. That is also exactly the reason why we think what's a great relief to that would be our access to the other medium, which is digital. If that happens, then we could still expand that that accommodation. The thing about it is that I think what this pandemic has brought us into is a stage of experimentation for everybody, and it's not a matter of wise choice, but it's a matter of must do. That we have to try things out, find out, fail fast, and then keep on moving. I mean, we don't know if our migration towards our large migration into digital is going to make us money, but we're going to do that anyway and still find out if that's something that will work.
Thank you for that. So, guys, medyo nag-overtime tayo. So, I guess we need to move to the next segment. But I'll call you in again later. I'm sure you'll join the next session as well. So, let's move now to our next topic. Thank you very much, Jay, Barbie, Santi, and Mickey. I'll see you again later. So, our next topic is focused on the state of the Philippine out-of-home and digital out-of-home. Now, let us hear from our first presenter. He was hired by McCann Erickson Philippines Media Unit, Universal McCann, to be part of a team specializing on out-of-home. At Universal Macan, he handled the out-of-home business of Coca-Cola, Cathay Pacific, MasterCard, and Globe Telecom until early 2005. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Executive Director of Philippine Center for Out-of-Home Media Research and Science, Lloyd Tronco.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at State of the Philippine Media. And this afternoon, I'll be sharing about out-of-home media in the Philippines. So, and its current state. So let me just pull up my slides. Just share my slides here. Share screen. Okay, here we go. All right. So I'll be sharing about the state of Philippine out-of-home media in 2020. So I just made a title for this, and the title is Searching for the Big Rebound. So the outline for this is basically this. We've been trying to look for a rebound because of slowdown in OOH. And then the second would be the change in the media buying habits. And then the third would be COVID-19 and its impact. And of course, the outlook for the balance of 2020. So OH started the year 2020 with a fair number of vacancies. And we discussed this last year in December when we did Media Outlook 2020. We discussed about the vacancies on the major thoroughfares. We saw a large number of billboards being vacant, C5 around 16% vacant, EDSA around 23% vacant, SLEX 48% and NLEX 62%. But given the situation right now, all those numbers have already increased. With regards to the change in media buying habits, I've noticed three things that all the OH vendors should familiarize themselves with. There are shorter contracts from clients. Gone are the days wherein there were long contracts, which were from, let's say, January to December, and then renewed year on year. There are shorter contracts now owing to tactical campaigns. And then the second would be with regards to exploration on digital OOH. So the exploration, a lot of the placements which used to be on static billboards are already being moved to digital. Of course, with LEDs, there is always this idea that you suffer also in terms of exposure because you're sharing the screen with several other advertisers as well. And then, of course, the change in the media buying habits also have to do with the shifts in the preference of OH type. So I think media planners nowadays and advertisers are more, selective when it comes to OH. It's not like before wherein there was always a knee-jerk reaction towards EDSA Guadalupe or SLEX or NLEX or C5. Media planners are now more selective. But the thing that we have to bring about here in the change of media buying habits is the fact that more planners are now more intent on finding out audience measurement. Just because, or just a little bit before the lockdown, I experienced a chance to be able to be invited in a few advertisers' boardrooms to discuss with them about audience measurement for OOH. And this will definitely bring OOH in what I would call a slippery slope. I will explain that later about the slippery slope when it comes to OOH media measurement. But moving on, so COVID-19 and its impact brings us to the fact that there is actually a reduced audience at the time of ECQ. In fact, the common knowledge about data for OOH is that 14%, only 14% stay at home for the whole day. Only 14%. And then 86% are out of home. But during the ECQ, it seems like the entire numbers just changed. They just shifted. 86% are at home and only 14% are out. So because of that, it leads to the second item, which was the pull out of OH advertisements because for one thing, audience was not there. And then the other thing, the latest thing that we've been seeing is that, of course, the IATF and MMDA rules, there's actually less audience in the sense that although you might be feeling the traffic when you go out, this idea of having one lane out of four not being used by the traffic immediately equates to the fact that if it's one lane out of four not being used, that's already 25% of the audience on let's say EDSA being taken out. So that's how it equates. Okay, so what's the OOH media outlook for 2020? I think this is the thing. Advertisers and agencies will be more discerning in their OOH selection before returning to their placements. Just going back there about that slippery slope that I mentioned when it comes to OOH measurement. Clients and advertisers are more demanding right now. How many eyeballs are actually seeing it? And of course, technology is already there. It's just that the question is who's going to pay for it. And ultimately, I think that will go towards the vendor. Okay. And then OH vendors may have to court advertisers with lower rates. And once again, this is the area wherein it also again becomes more dangerous because after this time, clients will be more understanding, or maybe vendors will also be more understanding. Okay, let's cut the rates a little bit. And then later on, when everyone is out, COVID is already gone, advertisers might say, well, kaya naman pala na ganito lang yung presyo. Why do you have to bring it back to the original rates? So that's a catch-22 that we're experiencing. And then in all these, I'd like to bring it back. Of course, audience measurement is still the key. That's the agenda that we used to have ever since. It still should be maintained up to now. Okay. So elsewhere in the world, what's happening in terms of OOH? Well, the promise was from 2019 to 2024. Let me just zoom in into this. 76% of the growth will originate from the APAC region. And sure enough, the Asia Pacific region really boasts a lot of growth in terms of OOH. And I am just looking and hoping, keeping fingers crossed, that this momentum will still be maintained despite this short disruption of COVID. Okay. And elsewhere in the world, in terms of like in Australia, out-of-home audience numbers have already risen as soon as the audience have started going out in the public. Okay, so will OOH rebound? I believe a big yes, because OOH is always integral. It's just a matter of time. And just to connect also earlier with what Mickey said with regards to being selective and choosing the right platform, I think a lot of OOH has to be shifted to what we call points of waiting. Because in the areas of points of waiting, alam natin, there's a lot of lines nowadays, whether it's in bayad centers or in points of purchase, there is a long point of waiting. And I think that's the potential that a lot of OOH vendors should explore. How to bring the ads at that point in time wherein they have 10 minutes, 20 minutes to fall in line. So that's one. So this is my last slide. I think it's just a matter of time. Now, although it's just a matter of time, that is very subjective, because in case the numbers of COVID infections rise and we are locked down again, I think that time will be extended. So this is where my short presentation ends, and I just give it back to you, Gladys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lloyd. It's very interesting, but I will reserve my questions for later. So at this point, we are going to hear from another expert on the state of the Philippine out-of-home and digital out-of-home industry. Now he is the 2020 President of Out of Home Advertising Association of the Philippines, or OHAP, Director of at Top Derma Innovators Incorporated, CEO and President at Sites and Sounds Outdoor Advertising. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Ramil B. Gutierrez. Do we have Ramil? There.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Gladys, for the introduction. I'm Ramil Gutierrez, representative of the Out of Home Advertising Association of the Philippines, formerly the OAAP, or the Outdoor Advertising Association of the Philippines. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to present to you a brief background of our association, OHAAP. I would like to present to you our slides. Here. Okay. OAAP from OHAAP. Our history, vision, mission, and what are things doing right now. Advertising started in the early times when messages were carved in stone plates and notices were printed on walls. It was the only form of advertising then. It was outdoor advertising. So it started with 15 founding members made up of first aggregation, Acme Neon Line, Associates, High Art Reproduction, House of Records, Luzon Advertising, Manalang Advertising, Manila Neon Advertising, Martin Outdoor, MJ Gonzalez and Associates, Modern Advertising Outdoor, Lunod and Associates, and only one survived, the United Neon Advertising. So in 1974, OAAP was placed under the jurisdiction of the Philippine Council for Print Media, PCPM, under the late General Hans Mency. In 1976, the Metro Manila Governor Imelda Marcos, in line with her cleanliness and beautification drive, decided to demolish all billboards, especially movie ads and neon signs along Rojas Boulevard and Luneta. The OAAP held a dialogue with the Metro Manila Commission for the purpose of formulating policies and guidelines on the installation of outdoor advertising structures and signs, which would jive with the MMC's governor's integrated beautification program. The OAAP also talked to the Minister of Finance regarding the municipal taxes on billboards in the local tax code. OAAP also was the instrumental in forming the Philippine Board of Advertising. In those days, it was the Philippine Chamber of Advertising and Related Industries. In May of 1974, OAAP became one of the charter members of the Philippine Board of Advertising, before called the Advertising Board of the Philippines, or the AD Board. AD Board being the mother and umbrella association of 10-member associations such as OAAP, PANA, 4As, ASAP, UPMG, IBA, MORES, IMAP, MSAP, and CAAP, also has its own standards of trade practices and conduct representing the trade practices from various advertising sectors, with which OAAP is the only recognized outdoor advertising association. Today, on its 56th year, the OAAP has expanded and innovated the outdoor industry and have decided to change its name to OHAAP, and stands proud of its position as the self-regulatory body for out-of-home advertising practitioners. We now have more than 100 active members all over the Philippines. So we have the national chapter composed of 65 members. Cebu, Visayas chapter, we have 18 members. Davao Mindanao chapter, we have 21 members. North Central Luzon chapter, 13 members. A total of 117 companies nationwide. The OHAAP is presently working with the local government units, Department of Public Works and Highways, Pag-asa, Senate, and Congress on the current issues on billboards, and likewise continues to coordinate with other government agencies and other sectors of the society. The Out of Home Advertising Association is the united voice of the nation's leading out of home media providers. That's our vision. Bound by its code of ethics, it is an effective self-regulating organization which exemplifies the highest ideals of professionalism, innovation, and service to its industry, community, and mother country. Our mission as the Premier Trade Association for the billboard, transit advertising, LED and signage operators, OHAP advances the interests of its members in government, industry, and public affairs, and strives to help accelerate the growth of the OOH industry by empowering its members, driving innovation, and passionately promoting all the benefits of an immersive communication platform such as Out of Home. May I request just to please play all the videos that we prepared. Hello. Okay. For the videos, we come up with this idea for helping the government curb and beat COVID-19. So that's our form of us community service CSR for helping us fighting the COVID-19. So in helping the government, we come up with that idea for us to help each other and uh, be more safe and uh, staying at home while during the pandemic. But with the out of home, we can help.
Okay.
So our brief assessment and evaluation on the negative impact of COVID-19 as follows. Number one, pandemic and the prolonged ECQ heavily impacted the members' cash flow. The two, walang pumapasok na income for the last 3 months. And yet, members still need to support their employees during this trying time. Number three, having been forced is now on how to manage the members' finances since 90% of their clients terminated their contracts. Number 4, having difficulty now to market OOA. Number 5, collections from clients are now frozen while site owners are requesting for full payment of client rentals. Number 6, around 50% of the workers are laid off. 7, no operation now of some member companies or are already closed. However, despite of this pandemic and global health crisis, we will strive to help recover and continue to promote OOH to boost business confidence, reach out to possible clients, and let everyone see the big picture. Think of out-of-home advertising. No virus can stop OOH. The best is yet to come for our beloved industry. Everyone's support and cooperation, especially for our members, will go a long way for OOH to recover amidst this pandemic. We just need to embrace the new normal. Keep safe, stay healthy, stay hopeful, and pray without ceasing. OOH bouncing back. So our association is going back to basics, staying afloat, resiliency. We have patience, hope that the pandemic will break down. We have to work harder and work together. We have to cooperate with each other, collaborate with other OOH platforms, and we have to be optimistic moving forward. This, for the new normal, we have to be safe if and when going out of home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramil. That was, I think, very, very informative. So just before we move to the next panel discussion, I just want to say thank you to Barbie, Santi, and Jay, our panelists in the first segment. Now we'd like to call in again Mickey, who will be joining us for the OOH panel discussion. MSAP President, Mickey De Castro. Also, hi Mickey.
Hi Mickey.
Hello, Mickey.
Yeah, there. Okay. So also Lloyd Tronco is joining us again for this panel discussion. Hi Lloyd. Now I'd like to give first few minutes to Mickey, like an overall observation in terms of what Lloyd and Mr. Ramil has shared with us within the OOH industry.
I guess one of the most one of the most affected in our organizations, group of organizations, is the OHAP, and of course the outdoor industry. On the post-pandemic world, right? So I think right now, what we all of us agencies, I think, would like to appeal to OHAP and to the org is to I think right now, of course, advertisers are right now, collections are low, and we're having difficulty in terms of billing invoices to clients. So I think the flexibility, I think the org is open to this, that in terms of flexibility in payment, I think we'd like to appeal to you to be flexible to our clients. And at the same time, I hope that based on what Lloyd presented, that the rates, in terms of rates, I think we have to sort of like freeze freeze some rates right now, since we are in a post-pandemic situation. So I think, but in terms of consumption, I think there are a lot of opportunities that that your org and in your client and your members have to be open with. With our disruption right now, I think there will be opportunities for you, to explore areas that are not yet explored. I think with our lockdown, and then most of us are working from home, I think the opportunity of doing community work or community or exploring those communities could be an open door to your organization. So that's it.
Thank you for that, Mickey. Now, um, just a reaction on my side for the presentation of Lloyd. I agree with Mickey. I think helping the advertisers also cope up with what's happening, and all of us are disrupted. So in terms of the rates, is it possible, like, at least for the 2020, there's like a special rate, or maybe it's not just a freeze, maybe it's like, an outright discount to also help our advertisers, give confidence to their bosses, the marketing directors, and, be able to present really the OOH as a very powerful medium to, as part of their media plans. Lloyd?
Okay. I'll answer that. I think that has already been implemented. Some other clients have already relayed that to the suppliers, to the vendors, and the vendors have already agreed. Now, as to how much percent that will be, between them. But I think that's why I was using that term, no, and I keep on using it right now. That slippery slope is because later on it will really lead to quantified audience measurement. Why is it supposed to be reduced at 10%? Why is it supposed to be reduced at 20%? We have to go that direction, and it's actually the push of the organization that I'm representing to actually have quantified quantification of, let's say, the audience, so that at least, like TV, we pay according to TARPs and whatever rating points. So it has to be that way. I think the discounts, that's already in place right now.
Okay. Okay. So, to Ramil, based on your presentation, and I can feel, and I can feel, that the challenges that you guys have. I mean, you've mentioned collection problems, 50% workers being laid off, and a lot of these things. So obviously, it's a much challenge industry. Now, it's related also to what Mickey and Lloyd has said. But as an organization, do you think OHAP can take, a more deliberate action in terms of addressing this need to, somehow bridge that gap? Because all of us are challenged, and maybe it's your organization, maybe talking to PANA and maybe talking to MSAP on how you guys can really discuss whether that's a special, discounts or rate or collection concessions.
Okay. Dito rin?
Yes, Gladys. We are on the negotiation with all the clients. Some of the discount
doubling COVID-19 testing rate from the current 16,000 to 32,000 per day. Presidential spokesperson Harry Rocket said they are about to increase the testings with the arrival of more test kits and accreditation of more laboratories. To accelerate testing efforts, Rocket said President Duterte has already authorized the use of rapid testing kits alongside a polymerase.
Barbie's mic is on.
Sorry, I think we had a technical issue there.
Isolate and treat
Ramil, sorry, can you repeat your answer? Sorry for that.
We noted that many companies through Project ARC resorted to rapid testing kits for their workers.
Okay, so sorry.
While the government has purchased test kits and distributed them.
Hi, Barbie.
So local government.
Hindi ka nakamute.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Tapos
There,
na yung
Gladys.
si Barbie.
You're back on air.
Yeah. Okay, please, Gladys, please repeat the question, please. Hello?
Hello? Are we
Yeah.
back?
Yes, yes. Please repeat the question, please. Hello, Gladys.
Hello? Are we back?
Yes, go
I don't know
back.
if it's from my side or from the side of...
So, what's the question, please?
I can't hear Ramil. Okay, so we're all okay now. Can we go back to Ramil for that answer for my last question?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Ramil.
Oh, yeah.
We can hear you.
All right, yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yes. For now, we are implementing the negotiation with the clients, and we are still on the middle of the talks, and hopefully we can get a win-win situation with them. So our association is flexible when it comes to uh, negotiating with the placement of our billboards, especially the LEDs. But uh, for the static billboards, most of us have billboards around the nation. It is located around the rural areas na mahirap kausapin yung mga site owners. So, as I've said, we also having some cash flow problems, and I hope we could help each other when it comes to cooperating with the clients, the media, the MSAP, and the PANAS para magtulungan lang tayo dito.
I totally agree. You know, this is the time for us to collaborate and really help each other survive the crisis. There's a question here for Mickey. The question is OOH, it's a general question, but I think it's also very important. Is OOH still a very important medium, you know, amid the crisis right now? Mickey, you're on mute. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, I think so. It's still, it's still relevant to the brands. I think it's one of the platforms that can be an alternative to the, to the popular mediums, right? And I think OH has proven their cost efficiency in terms, length of contract, and then of course the size and the appeal. I think it's still relevant up to today, and I wish that more eyeballs will be, will be released in the street, so that as we go on a new normal. No, I think right now, the challenge now is to scale down the rates in order to justify the efficiency of the platform, and to be able, to recalibrate. I think right now, in this new normal, we need new traffic counts, right? So the old traffic count is no longer relevant. So I think we have to assess that, and then come up with a scale down rates for all of our interested to participate in out of home.
Thank you for that. So we have two questions from our participants, which is quite related. So I'll just lump it into one question for both for Ramil and Lloyd. So the question is, do you see any upcoming innovations or new technology that we can offer to our clients right now? Any?
Okay. In terms of the technology, the technology is still digital screen. The question is, actually, it's not a question of technology right now. I think it's a question of location. Where do you put the technology? Because even if it's a static billboard, if you place it in what I mentioned, the point of waiting, where there are people who are waiting for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, okay? So that could be more effective than a digital screen that is out there in the highway. So it's not a question of technology right now. It's really more of going into the area where people are. So if you notice that one slide that I showed at the very start, it had a picture of the digital screens inside the Shopwise, inside the shopping mall. So that's OOH becoming more relevant. So it's just a matter of doing a good selection of OOH type. I hope that answered the question.
Yes. Ramil, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, but I agree with Lloyd. There are a lot of emerging and potential technologies to complement the out-of-home industry, just like the LED digital, which are very more interactive and more vibrant and more consumer-friendly approach. And if we going to put it in a location that is more relevant and more efficient in attractive in the viewer's eye, it is more very effective and technology will follow through.
Thank you. So another question from our participants: what would be the biggest challenge facing OOH in terms of getting the allocation of the budgets from the advertisers and obviously from the side of the agencies in recommending to the clients? Well, Mickey can also answer, at least with the reaction before Lloyd and Ramil share their challenges.
Gladys, can you repeat the question?
So the question is, what are the biggest challenge facing now the OOH, given that, historically, I think the allocation of OOH has always been smaller as compared to the other medium. More right now in terms, of our situation with COVID.
I think right now, well, in terms of support, I think it would still be status quo. I think definitely we need outdoor for support as a complementary medium to the others. I think the challenge right now is that, again, we have to, since we are disrupted, then we have to assess a new assessment for new learnings that you can share that will be able to, convince advertisers not to renew their faith, so to speak, in out of home. So it's I think right now we need a form of assessment now that all those statistics before are no longer relevant. So therefore, a new assessment should be made in terms of consumer against consumer consumption on out of home.
Okay, so Lloyd, I think that's a very good point from Mickey, and that's related to your piece of presentation, which is the measurement. So all the past data right now is no longer relevant. So how are you as a group, as an organization, would like to, somehow address this, or come up with plans on how to balance that?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the measurement is already there. It's been there for years, but no one wants to pay for the measurement. We talk to, myself. I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about taking the position of the vendors right now. We're here to aid, the vendors by providing measurement, because as a former media strategist from the internet side, that's what I look for. I look for the number of eyeballs. Then I can justify that, okay, I'm going to pay this much for this billboard. Now, the other thing also is examine the location and really check which ones are more viable. So of course the answer there to get more slice of the pie of the advertising, of course, would be number one, would be measurement. It still goes back to that question. Uh, we have struggled in that. The industry has struggled in that, despite the fact that the existence of the technology get a proper traffic count and a proper judgment of how many eyeballs are seeing the billboard. It's already there. So it's time to move from the vendor.
Mr. Ramil, so related to what Lloyd said, obviously funding for measurement, and it's a whole different discussion or maybe a different session or topic for the industry. But given that there's challenge right now, especially on the funding of measurement, how can we help our advertisers, and the agencies to really help them justify in terms of their recommendation for OH, given that at least you have a big membership, and maybe you guys can pull together whatever resources you have as a group.
Yes, Gladys. As of now, we are collaborating with some research companies like Kantar and Nielsen, and also Metropolis, and with the assistance of Mr. Lloyd Tronco. So our association is doing its part to give the data that advertisers claiming for. We have also making sure that to provide this data, we have to fund it. And now, because of this pandemic, we are all suffering, and we are also not relying on the data itself now, because it's like we're starting from the zero. We're starting it from nothing, because the data before is not relevant now. So I think we have to reset it, and we have to make more aggressive research and more aggressive move to give that details, so that we have to come up with good data for the clients, so that they can also pay us in a good business sense.
Thank you. I agree with that. Nikki, we have one question here before we take a break. So, is there an emerging channel, platform, technology that is overlooked or underappreciated, but has strong potential as a very relevant, promising, / influential medium in the new normal? Parang Miss Universe question yan.
Oo nga! Grabe. I think ako based on observation this past 3 months, no, I think the way we have used our mobile phones could be an opportunity, for advertisers, no. I don't know how are we going to expose advertisers on mobile? I mean, of course, there are mobile campaigns already, but those are standard campaigns. But in terms of creativity and disruption, I think the use of mobile phones can be an opportunity for us. And I think, as one of the questions said, that if there are I think new opportunity for out of home that is closer to the consumer itself is an opportunity. I think right now the out of home that we have, wherein we measure it on the eyeballs or traffic counts, has been disrupted. So therefore, it has to be closer to the person or to a group of people. I think that is where an opportunity can also be assessed. So I think, yes, in terms of those, that's the top of mind that I can think of. But I believe with this disruption, again, as I emphasize, it's an open season for all of us, not only out of home, but also the other platforms like radio, TV, newspaper, digital. So it's an open season for us to create and innovate. So I think right now, top of mind yun yung naisip ko based on what I have observed in the last 3 months while we are on quarantine.
Okay, so one last question to both Lloyd and Ramil. So we said digital OOH, but outside the LEDs or the digital screens, are there any other forms of innovation that you're seeing that because clients now could be more open? I mean, it's how you view it. Crisis equals opportunity as well. But are there other forms that you can see how digital OOH can really move forward in the Philippines? Lloyd? Lloyd, I think you're on mute. Okay.
There. Okay. So I think in terms of digital OOH, one of the challenges that we've seen is that the use of digital OOH itself has mainly been to display ads. From the end of the vendor, they have not fulfilled the requirement of creating content around the ad. For example, at this point in time, now would be a perfect time for an LED to say that these are the top 10 restaurants that you need to try for takeout within within 1 kilometer of this site. Content that is relevant to the locality, because that's what COVID has done to us. COVID has boxed us into certain localities. So LED or digital OOH should not just be used to display ads. It should be relevant to the community as well. So I think vendors have to go back and to reassess what else should they put in there. They should also be content creators, not just displayers of ads.
Okay, Ramil, last words.
Yeah, out of home is here to stay, and it is also the oldest form of advertising. So we cannot just stay away with outdoor, but hence we have to collaborate with other platforms so that it would be more effective and more efficient. Just like with TV, with print media, radio, it boils down to one. We have to work, we have to be unified because we are in the advertising industry, not just an out of home, not just a TV broadcast, but we are a whole family in an advertising industry. So collaboration is very essential in doing this business. That's it. So for now, be safe. And when going out home, you have to be more protective and more safe-minded. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we'll wrap up this session. It's been an interesting discussion. So we'll have a 5 minutes break. Thank you, Lloyd, again. Thank you, Mickey, and of course, Mr. Ramil. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Gladys.
you.
Thank you. we're back. So this is the last segment, but very important and very exciting. Now, our next presenter is a trusted advisor and first point of contact for key agencies, serving as their ambassador within Google, advocating for Google solutions, identifying business needs, opportunities, and solidifying C-level and key decision-maker relationships. He is the agency business lead at Google Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Andre Viseño.
Hello, Derek. Very nice to be working with you again today.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Very lovely to see you, and I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you again also so much, Norlin, and to FMI for giving me this opportunity. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Okay, can everyone see my screen? You guys can see my screen. Sorry, I actually don't have the grid view within Zoom. Can you guys see my screen right now?
Yes, we're okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you again, everyone. As Derek mentioned, I am the last person between now and merienda for the afternoon. So I will try to keep this session as engaging and as energetic as possible. I think I have about 25 minutes or so before we get into the Q&A. So let's get started. On my screen right now, we have, at Google, we have a lot of doodles that come out across the year. And this one here by far is my favorite one. This one here was rolled out in April, and it pays homage to our frontliners working and sacrificing their time and their livelihood for us. So, on behalf of Google and myself, I just want to say thank you very much to them for their sacrifice, and maraming salamat po. We have a lot to talk about, and a lot of stuff I will try not to repeat. We had a lot of really good content on how the crisis that we are experiencing today has transformed us both professionally and personally. And I hope that the session today kind of sheds light from an advertising, a marketing, and a consumer perspective, both on what we think and most importantly, how we do things now because of COVID. So that's going to form the basis of my presentation today. And after that, we can get into a really, really good discussion on what that means for our landscape and our ecosystem in advertising for digital in the Philippines. So let's get started. Here we go here. So let's take a really broad approach into COVID and coronavirus and what that meant for us with our first local case. And the data here is search trends, Google search trend data, not in absolutes, but that is indexed to 100. So if we can go back just about 6 months ago in January, this is when the Wuhan lockdown happened, in January 23. The first case happened January 30. You can see upon the first case here that we found out about in the Philippines, our search spike went up. That's when we started learning about it. We started searching for it. What is this here right now? It wasn't in the Philippines yet, right? But at that point, it was global already. Search trends dipped, right, between January 26 up until the point that there was a first local case in the Philippines. And just naturally, right, it's a lot more apparent and relevant to us once it was here. So you can see here from March 7th, first local case, March 12th was the community quarantine, and March 16th was when ECQ took place. That's when people just started caring about it a lot more in the Philippines. And if we take an even broader approach at a glance, the chart on the top left kind of holds true as well. People were searching for coronavirus, nCoV, COVID, while there was a gap between January and March. Come March, all these search queries just started coming in, including myself, and I believe a lot of you as well. If we were to somehow segment some of the search themes, right, across that time span, they're broken down into three. So first and foremost is really about the virus, right? So people were searching for what is coronavirus, what are the symptoms, what is nCoV, nCoV meaning, so just a plethora of different types of searches that relate to the virus itself. The second bucket had to do with what are the affected areas, right? Both globally and regionally, coronavirus in China, in Japan COVID, South Korea. And now even more so is a more localized approach, right? So now we can be looking at things like coronavirus numbers in VGC, in Manila, etc. And the last one here really has to do with the local news, right? So looking for latest credible news and resources that we have just about coronavirus in the Philippines in general. Philippines nCoV, Philippines COVID, COVID-19, Philippines news, etc. And if we take a look at all these search queries and we extrapolate this, it really addresses 4 different types of opportunities that we have here. First and foremost is your basic awareness, driving awareness for the pandemic. What are the statistics, how it's contracted, symptoms, etc. The second one is having to do with the latest news and updates. So trusted sources that can regularly update you and provide this sense of security for you and your family and about your surroundings. And the third and fourth buckets are going to have to do with prevention, preventative maintenance, and also treatment. So what can you do to enable and educate yourself that you're getting the proper awareness on social distancing, hand washing, all these appropriate measures that you can share with you and your family. And the last one, if in the event that something happens, where are your treatment facilities and the options that you have? So I think when we take a look at this collectively, right, just first and foremost about Google, these are the things that we've been trying to address here in the Philippines and for Filipinos abroad. So you can see here four different areas and in ways that we are trying to help as well. If you guys actually go to your phones right now and you guys type in coronavirus, you guys will be taken to a COVID-19 SOS alert. And this here is basically a hub, a repository of statistics, information, education, and what have you on certain questions that people and your fellow comrades are asking in the Philippines that will help you stay up to date on the latest information. The second one is mapping testing centers. So what are the particular testing centers that are within your proximity, that are hyper-localized for you guys to be aware about in the event that something should happen. The third one, which is more in particular of the space that we're talking about right now, is the DOH ads in YouTube. So we've definitely stepped up our efforts in terms of spreading massive awareness on what COVID-19 is and the things that everyone here should be aware about, consumers should be aware about, but also on the brand safety end. I know brand safety has been a really big hot topic lately. And so, there are certain restrictions in monetization. So, bidding on keywords such as coronavirus, bidding on keywords such as masks, etc., have temporarily been prohibited to make way for, for certain organizations such as DOH to capitalize on this time, right? And we highly do not want people to monetize during this time, during a really sensitive crisis that we're going through. And this is not just in the Philippines, but Google Global. And the last one that we have here is just a DOT or a hospital shuttle guide. So what are the hospital shuttle guides that we have that are within your vicinity, typically within Metro Manila, that everyone here should be aware about as well. So if you take a look at it collectively across the products, within search, within maps, within ads, one way or another, we are trying to use our platform for the greater good to number one, keeping people informed, and number two, for people to understand what resources they have at their disposal. And if we take a look, again, we keep going back and back. If we take a broader look now in terms of crisis and in terms of pandemic, Filipinos, us here in the Philippines, this is not new to us, right? If we even just take a look at just earlier this year, we had a volcanic eruption. COVID-19 is still ongoing. The Hurricane Haiyan, which happened in 2013, a really big pandemic, turmoil that put Filipinos in turmoil. And last one that we have here in Marawi in 2017, which is the epitome of political unrest. Collectively, us as Filipinos, we're not new to adversity. And actually, a lot of studies show that Filipinos, we just have a profound sense of resilience, right? That during times of crisis and turmoil, these are the things that really bring us together as a community. These are really things that really bring us together as a whole, and we fight through it together as a country. So, while collectively, us as Filipinos, we're expected that we're going to be in this period. We're going to be in this period of a pandemic for an extended period of time. Collectively, as a whole, we do remain optimistic, and I think that is that's a major takeaway for us today. So, taking a look at some of these stats here, 61% of Filipinos are extremely concerned about COVID-19 situation, and 99% are just concerned. So, I think collectively, one way or another, we are all concerned still to this point, right? 40% of Filipinos think that COVID-19 outbreak will last 2 to 3 months in the country. 67% think that it'll last longer. And you can see here this data is towards the tail end of March. I believe that our numbers have slowly risen in the last several weeks. So this number has definitely shot up, right? I think that we're all in agreement that this might last throughout the entire year, perhaps even next year, until that there is some sort of remedy or a vaccine in place. But collectively, we do know that this is going to last longer. but 75% of us are optimistic that the country will overcome the outbreak. And it really goes again to this profound sense of resilience that we will get through it. So, what's been happening then? If we feel this way, what are some of the things that, that again, now pivoting as advertisers, how should we be responding in a sense of a crisis? And if we look at it, there are two different ways. One is going to be pausing and waiting. And the second one here is going to be participating and adding value. And I think if we look inwards one way or another, I think we're doing a mix of both. Right? There's no one correct answer in whichever way it is, whether you're an advertiser, whether you're a partner supplier, or whether you're an agency. One way or another, we're doing both of these things. I think what's really key to highlight here, though, is the timing sense of it, right? Because we also don't want to rush in to get things done and add value when we don't have the facts yet. So that's really where pausing and waiting has its benefit. Gathering facts, understanding what your resources are, and then pivoting to add value as a brand. And we've seen this, right? We've seen this happen across a lot of advertisers in the Philippines. We can get into some examples a little bit later. And we're still into it. This is really just 4 months into it. So a lot of us might still be in pause and wait, but I think to a certain extent, there have been some efforts to participate and add value, whether it's going to be on a CSR front, whether it's going to be to shifting some of your advertisements more towards education as opposed to a hard sell. There's going to be some of that along the way. And just kind of a food for thought question in where you are today. This is also a really, really important time where brands can add value as beacons of light, right? And there's this situation that's called a VUCA situation. It's a leadership term that was coined in the 80s that has to do with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And during the time of COVID, it's the epitome of a VUCA situation that we're in right now. So again, really looking inwards, what are you doing as a brand, right? That you can be a beacon to add brand equity, a beacon to add saliency so that you are top of mind as well. I think for me personally, as a consumer, one of the examples that really sticks out here is, for instance, San Miguel. San Miguel, I believe it was in March where they pivoted some of their business operations and priorities, and they focused on delivering 100,000 liters of ethyl alcohol, right, every single day in production. So that is a sense, of brands serving as a beacon. It'll be a little bit of advertising. It'll be a little bit of pivoting to doing the greater good of a country. But in one way or another, what is something that is at the core and heart of your brand vision, right? And something that you guys want to capture, something that you guys want to capture and want Filipinos to know about of you as a brand. This right now is really the time for that, right? And something really, really important to take note of. I think also, right, aside from that, is really building your plan around human behavior, right? And we've seen a lot of human behavior happen over the last several months, and we will get into a lot of very prescriptive topics about human behavior. And in Google, we mentioned this as winning specifically in the micro moments, right? So there have been a number of different micro moments that have happened over the last several months. I can get into an example right now. For instance, would be baking pandesal, ube pandesal, right? A lot of people, you've seen that on your social media, you've seen that everywhere. You try to buy yeast, it's out of stock, etc. So what are some of the micro moments around baking cheese pandesal? Number one is finding the proper ingredients, a how-to guide, where to buy. When something is out of stock, what is the substitute? So those are all very unique micro moments on its own around making cheese pandesal. So if you think about them again as your brands, what are the micro moments that relate to your brands? Whether it's going to be in e-commerce, is it going to be in brick and mortar, and how are you guys pivoting to capture some of those demands because of these new human behaviors that are emerging during this time? As a matter of fact, right now, right, again, going back to yeast has been, it was sold out previously. So the search volume for the word substitute just took it was a hockey stick in growth, substitute for yeast, right? So again, these are these micro moments that brands really need to capture and capitalize on specifically during this time. So let's take a look at 5 separate behaviors, right, that are somehow emerging and reflecting in how people are searching today, right? And if you take a look at it as a marketeer, it's one thing, and you can also take a look at it as a consumer. And a lot of times you will see that they align very closely. So first one here is assembling critical information. Again, finding all the information that you need, whether it's going to be on search, whether it's going to be on YouTube for a how-to, or whether it's going to be through your social currency, which is going to be your friends, your network. Assembling that critical information is really going to be key. Discovering new connections and ways to connect with people. And I will get into this in a little bit, but it really has to do with maintaining certain level of engagement with your family, with your friends, but online, right? Not necessarily face-to-face, but how do you continue to drive connections via online channels? The third one here is adjusting to routine. And I can be certain that 100% of us had to change the routine one way or another, whether it's how they work, whether it's entertainment that they find online, whether it's the ways that they engage with their family and friends. This has been a major disruption in routine, and a lot of us have been needing to cope with this. And there are a number of different ways that people have been searching for this specifically. Fourth one here is praising everyday heroes. And really this goes back to more of, how can you contribute as a citizen and perhaps donate to the people that are the frontliners. And the last one here is taking care of themselves, yourself, and of others as well. So let's get into a little bit of the perception. So we'll get a little bit to the perception, and then we can get into the behavior and see if they align very closely. So Filipinos agree to stay home and limit going out and about. Right? So you can see here, 64% agree to stay home. And I think that this is something that might vary a little bit per pocket, per city and region in the Philippines, but collectively, I would love to say that we've been, agreeing to stay at home and really mitigate the spread of coronavirus. 82% have avoided public places. 63% have largely avoided public transport. 59% did not attend social gatherings, and 52% have reduced visits to dining establishments. So you can see here collectively the perception is we still want to stay home. And again, this is late March data, so there's going to be a little bit of delta here, but largely we still agree to stay at home. But now, how about the actual behavior, right? So that's the perception that we've been taking, but what about what we've actually been doing? And does it does it follow closely? So here is Google's mobility report, and you can actually find this online. And what it does is that it takes our data from our phones. I think Nikki mentioned, our usage of mobile phones and a number of different ways of how our phones are being useful today in advertising, but also in terms of gathering really introspective data. But this uses our GPS data for those that have opted in and those that have it on currently at an aggregated lens and put against different types of establishments here: retail and recreation and grocery and pharmacy, transit stations, and residential. So you can see here that since the time of ECQ started, going to retail and recreation sites has decreased by almost 100%, right? So negative 81% of going outside to retail and recreation locations, negative 59% of going to grocery and pharmacy locations. In terms of transit stations, MRT, LRT is also took a massive dive. And residential, so staying home or going to places of residence, has increased. So really, it makes me happy to note that not only do we think a certain thing, but we also follow through on our action collectively as a country as well. But on the previous slide, right, it said that we've had, negative 59% in grocery and pharmacy. But us as Filipinos, we've actually purchased a lot more, right? Filipinos purchased extra after the announcement. So it might be a little bit of hoarding, a little bit of, in preparation of things. But 62% of Filipinos have, purchased extra food and drink supplies, and 56% have purchased extra household supplies. And I think Derek mentioned it perfectly, right? In times of crisis, there are times of opportunity. And this sense of opportunity really is in the form of online shopping, right? So there is an unprecedented adoption of grocery delivery services driven by consumers looking to replenish. So I think early on, we really wanted to go out. We would go out maybe once a week because we had this internal inhibition to shop online, right? And a lot of that can be driven because we are one way or another burned by shopping online. We hear horror stories, or we're just comfort with the tangibility aspect of going to a store and buying online. But that somehow subsides, right? Those preconceived notions somehow subside in the face of adversity. And a lot of times we are not willing to sacrifice our health just for the sake of satisfying a tangible aspect in our livelihood, right? So you can see here, grocery delivery has spiked, food delivery has continued to spike. And I can guarantee that that a lot of us have someone in their circle or in their social media who is selling something, who is a newfound baker, or selling a recipe that is in, that has been part of the family history for a number of years that they are now selling. And it's really good. That's kind of the silver lining in all of it, right? Where we are now uncovering a lot of these passions and things that we are collectively as Filipinos really, really good at. But grocery delivery and online again. So it has been a tremendous spike and silver lining during this point. Another thing also is, our ability to be very, using descarte, right? And being very strategic in the ways that we go about things. Face masks, PPE, there was a shortage of it, but that doesn't really stop us as Filipinos in protecting ourselves. So one of the most popular search queries early on is how to do something and how to do in general. How to sew a mask, how to make a mask, how to make PPE equipment, how to be safe when I go outside, how to, and all these different things. And so, while these are things that you need to also take with a grain of salt, right? A lot of the content that is created as well, please do take it with a grain of salt. But the behavior is there as us as Filipinos, right? To apply our own descarte for a number of different things when it comes to health and safety, especially for our families. Another major thing, and is exactly what a lot of us are doing today, and that a lot of us that we will continue doing for the remainder of the year, is working from home, right? And so now there's been a 400% spike year-on-year increase in surges from working from home related queries. So these are the likes of home table, ergonomic chair, monitor, new equipment. So all Filipinos are really trying to make working from home a lot more comfortable, right? And there are going to be offshoots that come from this, right, as well. Some good, some not as good, that still need to be addressed. So one of them can be, mental health, right? So I know that a lot of us feel burnt out. I myself sometimes feel that way. And how can I feel burnt out when I'm just working from home, right? So this whole working from home aspect is a very new concept for us, and something that it's still very fluid and that we're adjusting to. But nonetheless, over the last several months, this is still spiking to this day, of people, making their work from home a lot more comfortable for themselves. And with that goes with a huge spike, 300% month-on-month increase for web conferencing. So I know early on it's been really, really difficult, right? Finding what is the conference platform of choice. What's a freemium version? What's a free version that I can use? I know that some social media platforms have given that as well. Google with Meets has also made it free as well. And now we are on Zoom. So a significant rise in web conferencing applications that we've seen across Google Trends. And with that, with Google, the usage of new platforms online, is also the increase in broadband plans to ensure that we can stream all of our content from work, pleasure, at home with no disruption. So there's been a 160% increase month-on-month for internet search speed tests, 280% increase in searches for prepaid broadband, and 80% increase month-on-month for internet promos. So again, making different ways, making our livelihood at home from a consumer perspective a lot more seamless. And I understand that the intersection between a consumer and as a marketeer, there's going to be a lot of different nuances here. But you can see that there are a number of different search trends that are happening. As a matter of fact, this is something that I forgot to mention, but a lot of these trends you can actually search for yourself. So on your free time, if you can go to trends.google.com, you can filter for specifically the Philippines and the particular keyword, and you'll be able to see their index to 100, what Filipinos have been searching for. And you'll see a lot of these ones here that we're showcasing today. Another one here is converging on YouTube, right, to adapt, cope, and to connect. And this is a really, really big one, both from a personal standpoint, but also from an advertising standpoint, right? You can see here, in terms of content creators, in terms of the content that they're generating, it's really in line with, now what are we doing from home? How can we entertain ourselves at home? And presents opportunities for you guys as advertisers to capitalize on the new content that has been emerging. From a personal standpoint, adapting, I mentioned earlier in terms of working from home, I remember I would need to search certain things of how to create my own work setup. How can I maximize my ergonomics because I'm having so much pain in my neck now. Coping can be one because I've just been feeling so burnt out. What are different ways that I can cope with working from home? So if you can imagine, consumers are on YouTube, are on the likes of YouTube, searching for these types of things because these are the insurmountable changes that are happening to us on a daily basis. And it's these kinds of micro moments again, right, that you guys as advertisers and marketeers need to take a look at really closely, because something that might be trending today might not be trending tomorrow. And you can see here that these emerge almost on a daily basis, specifically here in the Philippines. So highly encourage you guys to take a look on trends.google.com to really find out what is emerging in your particular vertical. Another one here I mentioned, right? So if it's one thing for us, there has been someone in our circle who just loves cooking. It might be us, might be our close friends, and that has emerged as a new passion and really perhaps as a new skill. So some people have found a new love for cooking at home and how-tos specifically in cooking, right? So for those of you that are going to be within the food and bev, that are going to be with FMCG category business as well, this is going to be really important, right, to capitalize on some of those queries that people are searching for. You can see here on the left-hand side, how to cook recipes has also taken a dramatic spike. How to cook adobo, pancit, rice, and anything and everything really in cooking, people are searching for. And I think it really goes to, to the notion that if you have success doing something, let's keep on trying to continue doing the same thing. So for those that have successfully made, ubi pandesal at home, let's try another, method of baking. Let's try something that doesn't require kneading. Let's try doing a sushi bake. Let's try doing something. So this is a trend that we've seen internally that that is not projected to slow down, right? A lot of us are going to be at work from home or predominantly from home for the majority of the year in a large capacity, especially with social distancing practices in place. So you guys can expect that these trends will continue to continue to rise and continue to maintain. And again, like really along with that, I somehow preempted my speech here, but you can see here rising recipe searches, the longa coffee. So I can make that perfectly. Let's move on to quick. Let's move on to tuna pie. So again, there are going to be a lot of categories and subcategories that might be relevant within your particular brand. And it's important to really take a look at these, right? Because it's not just Google search that people are searching for, but it's more so people are using YouTube as a way to search for how-tos as well, right? So recipes might be one thing on Google search, but how to cook might be something that might be more applicable on YouTube. So I think it's really important to take these into consideration and use these search platforms in place. A really common question that I get, what differentiates YouTube and search from a number of different search platforms? And it's really going to be intent, right? How many people here use search when they're just trying to, when they're bored, right? I think there might be like a YouTube for that. You might be watching a video somewhere. You really use YouTube, you really use search when you have a very strong intent to do something. So I think, right now, if your consumers are there in the mid to lower funnel and they have a very strong intent, you can assume that they will be on Google search finding those things. As a matter of fact, today, right, we have about 80 million searches per month on Google search. And that equates to about 1.6 searches per Filipino who's online every single day. So for all the Filipinos who are online every day, you can guarantee that they're searching at least once per day. And they have a very strong intent to do something. So I think that's a pretty powerful message as advertisers, especially in times right now where we're trying to make the most of our advertising money, and we need to know the best places on where we can put it to ensure that we are getting the most appropriate ROI. So a little bit of a tangent there, but hopefully it was useful nonetheless. And again, here in terms of passions, right? So Filipinos are turning to YouTube for their passion. Again, and passion takes a number of different shapes and forms, from people who still love to work out but can't get out, searching for a number of different courses online for being mindfulness, for those that love yoga, self-help. Now we're turning to online. How to make recipes within food is now again online on YouTube, and some things that perhaps you would do face-to-face now that you would need to find tutorials online as well. So passion points have no boundaries and there are no limits. And people are turning, again, with that very strong intent to do something, to go on YouTube, to get something done. I think that's a really big takeaway, right? Passions take a number of different shapes and forms, and YouTube has really been there as a platform for them to satisfy those interests. Another really big one here that's taking shape, and I don't think it's any surprise, is the subscription video on demand, or SVODs, how we call them, right? I myself am very guilty of this. I think a lot of us might think that there's not a lot of new content on Netflix for us to watch because we've just been watching so much of it. But there's been a year-on-year increase of 45% from movies and TV shows that, related searches, right? And so YouTube is definitely satisfying a lot of this, but our video on-demand services are also satisfying some of this as well. And one of the last ones that we have here is, us seeking connection and continued tradition. So a lot of live streams or what have you, live concerts, like mass live streaming, live streaming sports that are continue to play out globally, but we still want to be able to capture things in real time. And I think this is a really, really big trend. I think this trend will continue as one of the highest throughout the remainder of the year, right? Especially since globally, sports venues will continue to be closed, but sports will go on, right? Concerts, limited capacity, we still want to watch it live as well. So keep a lookout for live, right? Especially if you guys want to capitalize on a number of different live events. Within Google, we have our live masthead as well. And so something to really to look out for as an advertiser. Again, one of the last ones here is coming together to help with donations, right? And really reaching out. So just doing your part as a citizen, either with your local community or with a larger community that's taking care, of some of the donations at a national or a global scale. We've seen a 66% uptick in month on month for increase in search for donations. So there are a number of different things that we can do here. People really wanted to give back with their time, but also being able to open up their wallets a little bit to help frontliners and help those that really, really are in need. And so, kind of just summing up here, one of my last slides, Filipinos bracing for the economic impact. And I think this is something that's been on the back of our minds largely, and something that we are continuing to face on a daily basis. So 94% of us believe that this will have a huge economic impact to the world. 93% believe that this will have a really big impact to the Filipino community and economy. And probably more important and closely to your heart as a consumer and perhaps as an advertiser as well, 74% of Filipinos believe that this will have a big impact on household spending and finances. And so what this means largely as an insight is us just getting tighter, us getting smarter, us really focusing on things that really, really matter to us at this point. And pivoting that to advertising, what does that mean for you as marketeers? I think Jay said it perfectly. He had a handful of really good data points in his slide. I think he mentioned 77% of Filipinos, their behavior is to pay more attention to prices. 59% pay more attention to products on sale, right? So because people will have generally less money to spend as consumers, that naturally trickles down to us as advertisers having less money to spend as well. And when we have less money to spend, that means that we really need to be really, really tight on the objectives that we're trying to hit, the messaging and communication that we are relaying to make sure that everything is relevant to the consumer that we're trying to reach, and to ensure that they do purchase our products because they need it, or they are being made aware of our products because our awareness channels are really on point with who our consumers really are. There was a really, really good stat as well that leads now into my next slide, which is Filipinos are further utilizing internet banking, right? We've seen a tremendous amount of internet banking that, and really, what is it called? Digital finance, right? Or fintech, as we like to call it. People opening up a lot of online banking accounts, whether it's ING, whether it's GCash, whether it's PayMaya. We've seen a tremendous spike in this. And honestly speaking, for us as Filipinos, do we want to do this? I think that some of us do, but I think there is an opportunity as well because we're put in the position that we don't have a choice. That's the silver lining where we open it. And we have this initial hesitation to open up things when it comes to trust, but because of this time, it's allowing us to trust these kinds of institutions a lot more, and greatly so. Again, one more slide that Jay showed, right, in his slide is 51% prefer paying with credit cards, debit cards, and mobile apps. 55% increased shopping with direct home delivery. And I think us being in a work from home and largely in a quarantine status has allowed these stats to increase time and time again. And it's because of this, we're seeing a trickle down effect in people opening up online banking, right? And us being able to be open to the likes of e-commerce within Lazada, within Shopee, etc. So I think in the short term it's very difficult, but I think in the long term, in terms of digitizing our country and digitizing the mindset of people, is phenomenal. And I think that's something that will continue to increase in trend moving forward. So that was a lot of words from me, but if there was a certain takeaway, I would love for you guys to take away the acronym ADAPT. And I think it's very timely at this point. Adapt in nature means to pivot, to change, and to accommodate a certain challenge that perhaps you're having or going through right now, right? And A, for assembling critical information, gathering all the right news, filtering out the fake news that you need to protect you and your family and to make very conscientious decisions. The second one is discovering new ways to connect and nurture your relationships online. A lot of times, I think when we started quarantine, we thought that not having face-to-face meetings might be detrimental to us, right? When in fact, some of us might now feel as if it's a lot more efficient. We have a lot more efficient, meetings right now. So I think discovering new ways to connect, both professionally and personally, is going to be really, really important. Number 3 is going to be adjusting your routine and schedules to meet your demands on voluntary isolation. And again, everyone has a very different strategy and approach to this, but being able to adjust and to cope is going to be very, very important. 4 is praising everyday heroes who have stepped up in this critical moment, right? Just giving thanks, or really different ways to contribute on a number of different ways. And number 5 is taking care of your physical, emotional, and psychological needs for you and your family is going to be really, really important. So adapt is my biggest takeaway, and I hope everyone is staying safe, and I hope everyone is connecting well and doing well. And thank you again for giving me this opportunity to present to you all today.
Thank you so much, Andre. That's very interesting, and a lot of what you've shared kind of validated, some ideas that I have, and then some naman are really surprising findings. And one, I can relate with the ube pandesal. I've been ordering that. My kids now cook it every day, every single day, and they just have this their phone with YouTube, and they choose whatever whatever they want to cook. So it's very interesting. Now, just stay tuned. I'll just get into our first panelist so that we can get onto it. Our first panelist has been in the media industry for almost 20 years. She is currently the Chief Digital Officer of Habas Media Ortega. She brings with her rich experiences from traditional media to digital, from media planning and buying to business development and performance marketing. True to her media craft, Shane has brought home recognitions locally and regionally, 2 of which include Campaign Asia Digital Agency of the Year Award 2017 and 40 under 40 individuals in APAC by Campaign Asia in 2016. She's actually a colleague of mine when I was still in Densu, when I was the CEO of Kara. She was heading up iProspect. So it's great to see her again. Let's welcome Shane Garcia Madamba. Hello, Shane.
Thank you. Thank you, Gladys. Hi, Gladys. You look very well. So nice to see you.
Yes. Before we get into the panel and before I bring in Nikki again, can you share like top 3 trends that you see, being a very, an expert on this topic, and also your top line reaction with the presentation of Andre?
Sure, no worries. I think it's quite obvious in the presentation for me, what Andre showed. First observation ko, definitely clients are crazier because so many things have happened. So many things have changed. Clients have essentially been excited and at the same time worried because the past things that we have been doing, it should be the same way. It's never going to be the same. So one thing I've observed, clients are crazier, they're hungrier to do something different, which I think is quite exciting for our industry. Second naman, Gladys, I've also observed that everybody not a single client has not asked me about e-commerce. Finally! Because there has been, of course, in the past years, of course, we have seen the skew towards offline purchase. But now, oh my goodness, across all the product categories, it's e-commerce, which is really, really great. And then lastly, one thing I've observed, we are in a very different time, and I think it's gonna be one of the hardest, if the most difficult time in the advertising industry. That's for sure, because if we've been used to how we were doing media plans, I mean, gone are the days wherein SLAs would always be upfront, right? It's now about agility. It's about speed. We gotta be fast, and clients won't wait. Those are my essentially three big observations.
Thank you for that. So we have back here Mickey, obviously to represent MSAP. Mickey, just a top line observation based on what Andre has shared with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Andre. It's very, for us, both clients and of course us practitioners are learning so much now, more than before the pandemic. No, all the information we have to sift through it, and and give importance to what is relevant today. And I think what you said and what my observations are so far is aside from the popular Google searches, is the rise of the online communities or online local communities, so to speak. As you said on the Pandesal, in our village, we have our own online community where everybody sells everything. So I'm sure in Gladys village also there's also a community who are selling everything. So I think these are relevant times for that. And I think as what Shane said, that clients are asking what is e-commerce, how can they join the bandwagon, and I think those are relevant times today. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to it. And Shane, Mickey, and obviously Andre can answer this. It's quite interesting and up to you how to answer this. But one of the participants is asking, what is your reaction with the current news or development right now that advertisers are boycotting Facebook? I mean, any thoughts on that? Because it's in the news anyway, all over.
Maybe I'll go first.
Okay.
No worries. It's very fresh. You're correct, Gladys. It's all over the news. Just this morning, I actually joined a call, a regional call, just to talk about that precisely. And I think two things that we are glad that Facebook is on it. Obviously, they are triple checking everything to make sure that at the end of the day, the algorithm of social media has to be in favor of the users. I mean, nobody would want to be in a platform that essentially abuses their right to good information and quality content. And secondly, as well, I think for the fact that we are hearing about these things, I think all of us in the industry, much more so us as consumers, we need to be super, super vigilant. Not because, we're working with all these big giants. I mean, we're not zeroing in on one large enterprise. I mean, it goes for all. We need to be super vigilant. We know that these are like huge partners and all, but we need to do our part, especially in the agency side. We are the business partners of our clients. It is our responsibility to be on top of things and ensure that when we go live with our campaigns, it's 100% bulletproof.
Andre, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic. Obviously, it's very, very fluid. And I know that I think Jay mentioned earlier, right? It's that it's in the U.S. right now. It hasn't really percolated so much in the Philippines as of yet. But one way or another, whether you're managing global brands or local brands, it can be an issue. And I think the bigger issue that it raises is really in terms of brand safety, right? So regardless of what would be happening, around the world, I would strongly recommend taking a look at your own brand safety measures that you're imparting or implementing on your campaigns, because that'll definitely help a lot of the content and screen a lot of the content that your brands are subjected to or advertise against certain content, right? So again, it might have certain ramifications later, but it's really early to tell. But I think first and foremost is really taking care of your own brand first and taking a look at all the measures that you can to ensure you're not subjected against bad content.
Okay, Nikki, do you want to add to that? I mean, are you experiencing already, some directions from the clients?
Yes, yes. I think that's same with Shane. Of course, especially from our global clients who have directives, no, from their global offices. But I think Facebook, that this is their opportunity to become more conscious, no, in terms of, as Andre said, brand safety, and of course being as a responsible platform, no, not to, involve consumers or even us users or audiences in those kinds of controversial things. I think what is evident right now, although we are not as affected as the North America region, I think now is the opportunity, to gain advantage here in Asia, to level up in their brand safety and in their communicating to users about being more responsible in their content.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so why don't we read the questions from our participants? This is for Shane and Andre. As marketers, can you give us tips or strategies to build customer loyalty during the pandemic? Just a quick one. Shane.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that question. I have a lot of answers to that question, but I will try to simplify into two buckets. Unang-una, your question is quite critical during these times because it's now or never to lock in the people who are already in love with you. This is not the time to shy away, and this is definitely not the time to forget those who have been with you, even if things have been bad. So CRM has to be something on top of your list. So my first advice would be to really be data driven. I couldn't emphasize that more. You need to know who they are. You need to know them by their first name. You need to know their birthdays. Be data driven, because without data, CRM is useless, and you're simply gonna shoot bullets to spaces you don't know you're gonna hit anything. So that's one. Second, of course, if you are coming from a large enterprise, I highly recommend, of course, to explore the CRM leaders in the industry, such as, for example, if you're dealing with Adobe or you're dealing with Salesforce. I hope that you can reach out to these marketing cloud / CRM programs that can help you maximize the data, the first party data that you have. And I couldn't emphasize super the importance of leveraging on the people closest to your business right now. And it's gonna be on you. So now you're no longer a business owner or a CMO or a marketing director. You actually now have to be a friend. You actually need to be somebody that every customer will have to relate to.
Andre?
Yeah, definitely. Really, this is an amazing question. Brand loyalty is something that doesn't come, in one. There's not one answer to it, right? Mm-hmm. And there can be a number of different things that influence someone's loyalty to your brand. And if we go into it right now, like I mentioned before, everyone searches. Every Filipino who is online, which is about 65 million Filipinos, we search online once a day. And what that does is that it gives all Filipinos this empowered, this empowered sense that they get to choose the brands that's right for them. And that's a beautiful thing for us. And because of that, we make a lot more empowered and conscientious decisions. And because of that, brand loyalty can be impacted, both good and bad. So I think, the first advice that I would give here is really going to be in terms of understanding the situation. So right now, brand loyalty probably harps less on advertising, and it might harp more on customer service, right? So giving you some examples with airlines, right? People trying to get refunds, people trying to get their deliveries delivered to their house, right? So it can be something on the back end, on procurement or operations end, that can really drive brand loyalty. So looking at that aspect is going to be really, really key. But on the front aspect, really understanding who your users are is going to be really, really key. I think Shane mentioned something about data, right? And really knowing your customers, knowing who they are, what kind of messaging is relevant to them is going to be really, really critical, right? Because that communication that you have with them should be extremely relevant at this point. Again, going back to what Jay mentioned, 59% of Filipinos are paying more attention to price at this point. That resonates strongly, right? If you're going to be very price conscious, which they should be, how is that going to change your communication, right? Because if you address that, that really goes in a positive direction when it comes to brand loyalty. And probably my last point here is really going to be when it comes to serving as a beacon, right, during a VUCA situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, your communications and your branding might be more, you know, hard sell. How can you perhaps shift that, right, to some segments of your community as well to be more inclusive, not so much in terms of sales, but in terms of, you know, community, or, you know, for instance, in terms of food, right? We see a lot of food brands that aren't selling, but they're pivoting their communications now in terms of recipes, bidding on recipe keywords as well, right? So being this beacon during this time also drives really, really strong brand loyalty as well. And it's a number of these different factors that will really be beneficial to brands and not necessarily one factor. And that would be my take.
Yeah,
excellent question.
Yep, so very interesting. And, you know, I wish we still have 2 hours for this session. Very quickly, within the three of you, I think this is a very important inquiry. So with the growing number of digital media consumption that was presented by Jay and, you know, agreed by everyone in the panel, do you see that this consumption will continuously increase with the current scenario, or even after, you know, the lockdown has a bit relaxed in some areas? How do you see it? I mean, what's your forecast? Shane.
Yes, my fearless forecast is it's gonna even triple in the next few months. 3 very important ingredients. Number 1 would be gamification. So brands, us in the industry, we will be pushed to the corner of the room to actually ideate something beyond interactivity. Definitely, it's going to be 1000% experiential. Second also is on digi entertainment. And the tricky part would be it's going to be both quality and quantity, right? Because usually when we produce content for clients, they need to choose one of which. If you want a lot, then you kind of sacrifice a bit on quality. And then if you want quality, then we can't do a lot of content. So now there's no more excuse. Our consumers out there will demand triple the quantity, triple the quality of the content we're going to put out. So that's going to be a big challenge to us marketers. And lastly, what I'm essentially seeing would be a full shift to actual budgets going to digital as always on. Because admittedly in the past 1 year, couple of years, we have really seen clients still do tactical digital, and with, of course, the lockdown and people increasing consumption online, especially on their mobile phones. It's going to be an always on for brands to, of course, drive resonance, drive relevance, and of course, be a meaningful brand to their consumers.
Okay, so who wants to add to that? Maybe Mickey or Andre?
Si Andre na lang ang finale, I'm sure.
Okay. Andre.
No, I think for me, what, of course, it will be retained or increased. Yes, that's definitely a given because we have already been disrupted. We are have this kind of behavior already that we have adopted in the last 3 months. And I think one thing that we can address among us is, I'm sure there will be, as you said, that the Filipinos is increasingly being very negative in terms of their outlook. But I think I think digital can help through encouraging, encouraging to use or educate the consumer on business tools or even managing money. So I think these are opportunities for the regular consumer who right now have, let's say, built an ubi pandesal empire and now would like to, to expand. So I think small businesses have increased in a way out of the consumer's comfort zone, and I think what the digital platform can help is to, giving them the business tools to, encourage the small to medium enterprises, to become big.
Okay, so I think it's obvious that in terms of digital consumption, definitely it will increase. As Shane said, it's going to triple. Andre, I guess my question is more of on the ad spend. Have you seen significant increase, at least on the Google side, for the past 3-4 months? And what's your forecast also for balance year?
Yeah, really, really good question. Really tough question also. I think a really good indicator is where our current economy is, right? And I think that one indicator is that our economy is projected to grow pre-COVID times by the end of 2021. So I think at that point, it will largely be in parallel with how our economy grows. And I think that collectively across the advertising industry, it's hard to say if we're going to triple or double in my perspective. I think a better cut would be by industry, right? Because if you take a look at right now, if you take a look at travel, tech, and telco, it's very difficult right now. No one's in the air, right? Not a lot of shopping that we can do in brick and mortar stores. So I would be really keen to say that in those sectors, perhaps not as much growth, probably even a slight decline while our economy rebounds. But in certain sectors within CPG, we've seen tremendous growth, right? So, and that has a lot to do with helpfulness as well, right? So, basic necessities, those categories have been growing, and we look to see those categories growing as well. But collectively, as a country, I would like to err on the side of caution a little bit in terms of growth, in terms of pre-COVID growth, but more from a category cut that we're seeing, expected growth from certain categories as well.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for that. Another question here, actually, I'm very curious, and I think it was discussed even in the past session, about specific to influencer marketing. So the question is, do you have more insights on the influence and reach of YouTube bloggers, particularly non-celebrities with millions of followers? What are you seeing in terms of the trends right now? Terms of the YouTube bloggers and influencer marketing, maybe in general. Maybe after Andre and Shane can also give her inputs.
Shane, do you want to go first?
No problem. So in most of our campaigns right now, we are definitely in learning beast mode because the requests for, of course, influencer marketing has truly increased, especially as mentioned, media consumption online has substantially increased. But definitely in terms of trends, we are seeing more and more the impact of micro-influencers. This is basically what we call the tribes. And now one of our learnings is actually we are seeing more and more local tribes, as in we would have provincial tribes, tribes in Quezon, tribes in Cebu. It's really, really nice. And when you look at them as a whole, they really move as one. It's really wonderful. And when they believe in a cause, when they believe in the campaign, you can really see that they are quite active on social. And this goes against the earlier practice wherein you have to pay for every tweet or you need to pay for every blog. I definitely can say gone are those days, and it's really indeed the time of micro-influencers. And we're not only talking about social media, it's micro-influencers across the board, via blogs, via Twitter, via every social platform you could think of. And YouTube even escalates that level further because of the audio-visual feature, of course, when you do your YouTube live or you do your YouTube video. So yes, definitely hugely agree. And the tribes are increasing, definitely towards the trend for micro-influencers.
Andre, maybe
Yes.
Some inputs there?
Yes, super on point with Shane. In the Philippines, I forget the exact stat, but I believe it's about 70% of our country is under the age of 30, right? So you take a look at our country as a whole, we're extremely young. All of us also in this presentation are all extremely young as well, right? And so I think that from that standpoint alone, it goes to show what platforms the younger generation resonate to. And a lot of that is going to be within YouTube. And a lot of that is going to be specifically in terms of content creator growth, right? So if I can throw out a little bit of stats here, right? Since 2019, so just basically just a year and a half or so, we've seen 9x growth in the content creators that have 1+ million subscribers. So we went from 15 of those to 140 in about 18 months. We've had 6x growth in the content creators for 100,000 subscribers, which is our silver button. So it's, long gone are the days where we follow one subscriber and they just have millions of followers. Alluding to Shane's point, there are thousands of these creators that have cult-like following. They have 50,000 followers. They only have 50,000 followers, but every single one of those followers is a diehard fan. And so that's the unique position that we're in here in the Philippines. And a large part of that is really driven by our desire to watch and consume content. And that varies between, it's not just here in Metro Manila, right? It goes up north, it goes down south. People who are into tech, people who are into fitness, hair care, beauty, lifestyle, food. You're gonna have a creator there that is creating amazing content that have tons of viewers and that are diehard viewers. So this is something that's definitely not going away. If anything, it'll continue to rise in demand and in content creation for years to come, despite the current situation that we're here right now in lockdown.
Thank you for that. Andre, we have 2 questions here from Miss Imelda Alcantara, and I don't know if you can read it also, but very quickly. Google recently announced that it would finally pay publishers for news, but the Philippines is not among the first batch of countries. When would this be implemented among the Philippine publishers? Okay, can you answer this?
This is a really, really good question. To be honest, I don't want to pretend to know the answer. I have no idea. So I know that this is circulating. I don't have the answer to this one specifically when it comes to publisher, revenue share and all that.
Yeah,
we do have. It's a bit difficult. I don't have the answer to it.
All right, so another question here. While traffic increased significantly during the lockdown due to high interest in COVID news, but we saw the opposite nga naman for digital advertisers. Kasi ako din, based on my experience with the clients I talked to, they'd rather shy away from this news kasi nga because of the negativity and all that. So what is the monetization opportunity with Google with regard to the COVID-19 news? Which publishers continue to produce because obviously people are looking for that. Should publishers strike a balance between COVID and non-COVID news? We have a lot of participants kasi from the publisher side and even from the news organization. What is Google outlook for digital advertising in the second half of the year also? And are we going to see demand increasing for the second half? Dami niyang tanong.
Okay, really, really good set of questions. Let me try to break this down as I can here. So what is the monetization opportunity for Google with regard to COVID-19? Okay, so I think first and foremost, it's really important to relay that you as an advertiser have control, right, of where your ads get placed. So I think that's where, again, harping on brand safety. I'm going to say it, forever, but your brand safety measures are extremely important, both on search, both on display, and on video, right? So YouTube, we have 51 million people who are on YouTube in the Philippines, so just about half the country. Monetizable inventory is about 41 million, right? And so that's 18 plus. And for those people that can see ads, you have control of what's your negative keyword targeting, what are your negative parameters that you want to put in place of where your ads can be seen and not. So I think it's going to be really, really important to work with your agency or work with your digital marketing teams to understand what digital marketing negative keyword targeting you have at your disposal, first and foremost, for brand safety. That's going to be really, really important. What is Google's outlook for digital advertising? I think for second half of the year, again, I think we somehow answered this before, but it'll be very strong in some categories. That's just my prediction. I don't have any data to back that up. My prediction is I think specifically within food and beverage, specifically within CPG, FMCG, it'll continue to be strong because it's very need-based, and the messaging is what shifts, right? So you're going to have some of your product selling there, but you're also going to have some of your messaging that is your beacon of light, right? That also harps on brand loyalty as well. Some categories are going to be offline all year. You can probably identify what some of those categories are going to be within travel. It's really, really difficult right now. So there is going to be a demand in certain categories. So I would highly implore everyone to look at it not as a country perspective, right? Take a look at what vertical your business is in today. That's going to be the most important data, and making data-centric decisions based on your category in general.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think another question is related to that, which you've answered already in terms of the Google products and the opportunities that the marketers can consider. Specific to Shane, and I think with the rest of the panelists. So one would be, what do you think about the current state of the industry, meaning the agencies and the marketers in terms of their digital transformation? I know everyone's talking about this even as far back as 10 years ago, 5 years ago, but obviously we need to fast track. So what's your take on the current scenario, and what is your forecast? I mean, given what has happened to us and given our situation.
I love the question. I super love the question. Thank you for that. I think it's a very beautiful time for all clients across different tiers to actually transform today, because they would have skipped a lot of steps, which a lot of companies have tried their very best to learn in the past several years. It's such a great time to play. I think that's the best word. It's the greatest time to play around, experiment, A/B test, and fail. Because with failures, of course, every campaign would get better and better. And I think my observation also would be the push right now. It's gonna be faster than before. I could actually remember just several years before, you could really see some clients who are saying no, as in capital N-O. No, they don't want. But now I think everybody has that enlightening light bulb, and actually that realization that, oh my goodness, everybody's online. I am online, right? So it's just a matter of time, and it's gonna be quite fast. Faster than before. And right now also, I wanted to share that in my observation, it's going to be a big challenge, or much rather to put it as an opportunity for us leaders in the industries to put the right people in the right roles. Because I haven't really, usually we look for the right people, especially in agencies today, diba? You have to be like, oh my goodness, you have to be multitask. You media plan, you media buy, wala na lang, pick up mo yung check, diba? I mean, it's like super everything. And right now, it's gonna be a notch further. It's gonna be all about putting the right people in the right roles. Because even if you have the right people, but they are not in the right roles, then it's still gonna be a hump that needs to be settled. So yeah, that essentially would be my observation.
Mickey, ikaw muna. How do you see the landscape right now within the agencies and the clients, especially on transformation, transformational digital?
Actually, I think this year is the most relevant year to be transformed. I think it's pretty obvious that we can no longer rely on, above the line, but more on a holistic person who can both transition from ATL to digital, digital to ATL. I think right now, the willingness, these planners has to have that heart and willingness to learn, to be transformed at this point in time. I think we should all do, and I think we should not leave any, stone unturned. And I think we have to learn, or forced to learn, or go out. I mean, resign. if you're not adapting to this kind of transformation, as they say, diba, if you can take the heat, get out of the kitchen, but I think our planners today has to have that willingness, no, to transform and adapt to these current times, because it's no longer an excuse. Before, as Shane said before, pwede nating sabihin, saka na yan. But, but right now, 2020, and I think this is the year that you have to transform yourselves, no, to become masters of this craft that we are into. Yeah.
Thank you, Mickey, for that. And Andre, I'll give you the last, the last time for your message to everyone. But when I was working in the agency, Google and the other partners also very helpful, because right, Shane, we don't have the people, the training, and normally when we train planners, they go somewhere, and the training is really very very difficult. So what is your advice, and how do you think we can move forward as an industry to really take on the challenge together as a group? Because at the end of the day, an informed and transformed industry will help everyone.
Yeah, I mean, Direct, these are amazing questions. Really, really good questions for everyone. And listening to Mickey and listening to Shane, what it really harps on specifically with agencies, right? Now is really the time for agencies, right? Like the importance of agencies and what they bring to the table and their value add and value proposition. This is the time right now, time of crisis. And I think this is the time to pivot in terms of services as well. So now, in terms of e-commerce is really big. How can agencies, and this is something that I'm also currently working on with agencies as well, but how do you pivot e-commerce as well? So clients before that weren't very keen on e-commerce. How can we now, kind of influence that decision to get on e-commerce as well now? Another really big one across agencies is going to be capability, right? I think we talked a lot about that. Transformation, at the core of transformation is capability. So, keeping teams, keeping leadership team, keeping your managers and your day-to-days really abreast on the latest developments within digital is going to be really key, because you can see here things move so fast, right? They move sometimes really fast for myself, and I work at Google. So, even more so at agencies where capability really needs to be at the forefront of priority, really from a personal standpoint, but also from a professional standpoint, right? Capability is really at the core of everything. So having a very rigorous plan on getting your teams enabled on all platforms is going to be really, really key. So, again, yeah, capability is one. Innovation and really pivoting plans to continue to add value are probably going to be my top three.
Okay, so I think mag-overtime na tayo. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Mickey. To our participants, if you have questions, if you have inquiry, please feel free to contact our panelists and maybe through Piera. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Direct. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that ends our webinar, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to thank our media experts for sharing us their valuable information that we will use to direct our decisions on media planning and buying for our ad spend next year, and maybe even for balance year. To our participants, we thank you for your invaluable participation in these very interactive and informative discussions. We hope that you learned a lot from this webinar. Now I will turn you over to our project manager, Paul Castillo. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Ms. Gladys. So once again, we thank our participants in joining us in this webinar. It was such an informative session with full of insights that will help us in our brand building and marketing program. On final note, we hope to see you again in our upcoming learning events. Opportunities and challenges in science and print business during pandemic episode 1 webinar on Friday, July 3, 2020. Content marketing that matters webinar on July 14, 2020. Project management tools and techniques webinar on July 30 to 31, 2020. Capturing drivers of market preferences, a webinar on conjoint analysis on August 20 to 21, 2020. Book your exhibit booths now in the 25th Graphic Expo 2020 on September 8 to 10 at SMX Convention Center, Mall of Asia, Pasay City. Join and win prizes in the 25th Graphic Expo T-shirt design contest, a special feature in the 25th Graphic Expo 2020 on September 8 to 10 at SMX Convention Center. Shout out to all photographers and videographers. Join the PH Call to Earth, an initiative on climate change existing efforts in the conservation of the planet Earth. Upskill your team's knowledge, skills, and capabilities to meet the requirements of the new normal. We offer customized in-house training for your company. Call us for your needs, and together we can design your specific. Start your business recovery strategies by going digital. We offer digital marketing services package based on your business transformation requirements. Start your digital transformation journey now. Call us for details. For inquiries, you can get in touch with us through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also email norilyn at fmi.com.ph and call us at 8869 or 88960637. Again, thank you to our resource speakers and experts, and of course to our participants. We hope to see you in our future webinars. This is Paul Castillo signing off now. God bless, stay safe, and mabuhay.